Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 174. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I am Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. I inspire others with my whatnot ways, and I bring about an invocation of the essence of the Raging Bulleteers. So says the sensei of the whatnot, Stegall, and master orator.
How's it going, eh? I thought you were going to do this. You all will understand later on in this episode where these wonder where this comes from, and you will be laughing as loud as Sean and I are.
Yeah, actually, I want to say, in all kiddingness, all kidding aside, I'm making up words now too, so you're rubbing off on me. All kidding aside, you really did a great job with running this segment. I had a great time with this discussion, and I think you guys will too. This book is deep.
Yeah.
This is part 2 of what's going to be, I'm assuming, a 3-part discussion now on For Tomorrow. This episode will, obviously it's airing right now, we're going to do an episode with, a small episode with Freddie E. Williams II, which is going to be coming out over the weekend, and Monday at the latest. It's going to be a small mini episode, and then we're going to be back midway through next week with what I think is going to be the final part of our For Tomorrow discussion. But we got into some deep elements, because one of the things that Azzarello said in the introduction to this story was that he wanted readers to really think about this story beyond what was happening on the pages, and things were left open-ended for the purpose of people to think that way. So it's funny how having a discussion with 2 other people about this story on a deep level really took things to play. We had passionate discussions on this one.
We're going. It's
even
fun.
now we're talking about this after we recorded the segment. I'm thinking about things the 2 of you were saying that I was adamantly against. We were having discussions. I'm like, well, I don't know. There's ways that those thoughts influence what my thoughts were. So I'm hoping all of you listening to this get that out of this discussion. Whether you agree with anything any of us said or not, I do encourage you to reread the story again with some fresh eyes, because I'm shocked by it. Our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InstockTrades.com. At DCBService.com, you can pick up Green Arrow Black Canary number 25, written by Andrew Kreisberg, art by Renato Guedes, Mike Norton, Jose Wilson, and it's Magalhaes, and Bill Sienkiewicz, with covers by Ladron. The main story of this month will focus on the sudden and strange return of Green Arrow. Of course, we're talking about the Green Arrow that Black Canary stabbed on her wedding night. And in this issue's co-feature, Black Canary is stunned to find out that Cupid can't tell the difference between the 2 Green Arrows, which could lead to one of the deadliest supervillain team-ups of all times. That's regularly $3.99, 40% off only $2.39. So we're talking about the Green Arrow that was posing as Ollie.
Nice.
So that'll be interesting. But I do like the fact that, I'm assuming Cupid's poison arrow, right?
Yeah, that's poison arrow.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how she reacts to...
Well, that's Ollie. That's Green Arrow. So
right.
Heck, yeah.
Yeah. That'll be interesting. I'm really enjoying that book. And we have a discussion about it on this episode real briefly when we're talking with Mandy. It'll be in the Raging Reel at the end of the episode. We'll talk a little bit about Chicago Comic-Con, and we end up having a nice little tangent about Green Arrow Black Canary. So definitely listen to that at the end of the episode. DCBService.com is your source for your pre-order needs. You got a few days left to get in your order for this month, but then you'll be seeing some of the great discounts that they offer next month. So it seems like every month I keep trying to keep my budget in a pretty stable place. But it is funny how like a 50% off on a book
will get you in. Yeah.
It will. It will make
you a taste.
It
nice.
really does make a decision for me, because like the Vertigo crime titles, great example. I enjoyed both of those hardcovers, but those are $20 covers, $20 cover price regularly for those. You start giving you $10 a piece on them. Yeah. I'm getting now. It is buy one get one free.
It's 2 for 1. All right, let's rock it.
A $10 hardcover is a big selling point to me. So it is interesting how those discounts do affect my purchase decisions. Jim, mid to late September, we're going to start discussing Preacher Book 1 hardcover. It's the first 12 issues of the series. And our great friends at dcbservice.com have given us our good friends at InstockTrades.com, I should say, same company. They have given us an amazing discount. The book is regularly $39.99. It's 47% off. They're giving us an extra 10%, $21.19 to pick up that hardcover. And join us for Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy. Oh, is that all right? But it's great because they've also given us a budget option for our fans, too. Volume 1 and Volume 2 in trade, $14.99 regularly, 47% off, only $7.94 each.
So that's almost 2 for 1 right there.
Yeah, and that's a huge
great
difference
deal
as
for
well.
you.
Well, I'm glad they give us the option of either doing the hardcovers or the trades, though, because a lot of our listeners are talking about money's tight right now, but then they can join us for that discussion. So it's really nice because they could have just said the hardcover.
Right.
And that was really nice that they're supporting us with both options at that discount. So I want to thank InstockTrades.com for being so flexible and supportive for the content that we're going to be offering, because it's always fun to have our listeners actually reading along with us as we're doing these. And it really is kind of reading along with us because of the fact that some of our episodes take longer than it does probably to read the book sometimes. But anyway, thank you again, DCBService.com and InstockTrades.com. Want to remind everyone about our voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434. We will be having voicemails back again on our next episode. So we haven't had a chance to record any of them today, but we'll definitely have them on our next episode. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, Sean, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth in the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if you haven't read something, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Why were you pointing at me when you said, well, Sean?
Hey, I'm just excited and happy to be here.
You are happy, excited, which is crazy because it's 9:35.
You filthy criminals.
All right, guys. Well, we're back for part 2 of our dissection of For Tomorrow. We're going to kick off with issue
208, and the writer is Brian Azzarello. Pencils by Jim Lee, inker Scott Williams, colors by Alex Sinclair, letterer Rob Lay and Nick J. Napolitano, editors Eddie Berganza, Will Dennis, with assistant editor Cassie Seijas, with additional inkers by Richard Friend, Sandra Hope, Matt Banning, Eric Basaldua, Jim Lee, Dan Mickey, Trevor Scott, Tim Townsend, and Joe Weems. Superman, of course, is created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Schuster. The two most famous names in DC Comics, and I botched it.
You were doing so well. I was very impressed.
He was doing great.
Until
they got to that.
The two most famous names. Yeah. I dropped the ball.
Well, I like
Jerry Siegel and Joe Schuster.
Because you're like, Superman, of course, was created by. You sounded like you were going to do. You were like you were doing it for a cartoon show. Yeah. I was really impressed. I still am.
But yeah,
just I'm an idiot. Wrong. Also, I want actually because we're probably going to put the segment that we just recorded on the end of the show. I want to welcome back Mandy Stegall to the show. Thank you for joining us again, Mandy, for our ongoing discussion on For Tomorrow.
Yes.
Superman 208.
I know.
It's interesting. Daryl brought up an interesting point that we didn't have a chance to talk to Mandy about. And I don't know if you've heard the voicemail from Daryl where he was talking about some of his expectations for this series. And I'm sure various people, depending on how you read this, if you read it monthly or if you picked it up in trades or, what you knew about the storyline walking into it, might have had expectations. It brought up an interesting point, though. When you guys, because you both read this differently than I did. I read it in single issues. I read it because it was I basically, when I was jumping into it initially, I thought this was going to be Superman's version of Hush. So I got kind of where Daryl was coming from with it. And maybe that is part of the reason why I had such trouble getting my head around it as we came through, because he made a very interesting point with that. Did you guys walk into this story with any expectations on what you were expecting to see here? Were you expecting to see all of Superman's rogues gallery, or were you expecting, or did you know what the story was going to be going into it? I don't know. What were you guys?
Absolutely not. I had not the foggiest idea of what this story was supposed to be about. Didn't really expect anything specific from it. I found this story, because I was just coming into comics and I was basically looking to read anything I could get my hands on. And this just happened to be one of those stories, and I was just like, okay, let's check this out and see what it's all about. And so I had absolutely no expectations coming into this.
What about you, Jim?
Well, as I said, I got this originally for the artwork, for the Jim Lee artwork, and just for the way it was laid out. But I didn't think, by the art by that did Hush. For me, it's the writer of a series that I think of, because Winnick wrote Hush, so that's who I'm thinking.
Jeff Loeb wrote Hush.
Thank you. Hi.
Yeah.
Winnick did Red Hood. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
That's okay.
You know what I meant, but
Well, I was just saying for the conversation.
But with me, I think of Jeff Loeb, or I think of Winnick like that. That's for me the type of stuff.
So you were assuming because it was going to be a different writer that we were going to be getting a different style of story.
And same thing, because this is Brian Azzarello, so I'm thinking 100 Bullets. I'm thinking that kind of a grittier style type thing. So I was kind of curious to see if there would be a grittier style, or if there still would be the bright blue Boy Scout that is a normal Superman. And we are getting a darker story out of this Superman. So for me, my expectations was beautiful artwork, a little bit grittier story. So my expectations going into this was, fulfilled. So for me, I can understand what he's saying, but I went into this thinking, what I'm going to get is what I am going to get. So
I just thought it was interesting when he mentioned that, because I expected this was going to be a series where some people were going to love it, some people were going to hate it, some people fall in the middle. It is one of those, and especially because of my own experience. I definitely had my own unique feelings on going into the series initially. It's just funny how this whole book went. What?
I'm just laughing at how much of an idiot I am right now.
Why?
Well, first I mess up Stegall and Schuster, and then I'm like, Jug Winnick wrote Hush. Like, oh man.
Yeah. Well, we were very off the cuff with that. You didn't know we were going to be having this discussion right now. I kind of blasted you into this one, so I'll actually defend you on this. I'll throw you under the bus later.
Oh, okay.
When you don't see it coming.
Okay. What a pal.
Yeah. But I thought he brought up an interesting point, how coming off of Hush, he had some expectations because of what Hush presented. How it was kind of every issue had a different Batman villain in there, and you got to see most of the rogues galleries versus this. I don't know that that's what I expected with this when I originally read it, but there was definitely, I think there was definitely a connection to Hush for me that may have been holding me back on this book as well. I don't know. Because I do find now that I'm really enjoying this. So why don't we go ahead and just jump right into the discussion about 208 then?
Yeah, that cover, though, you got to love that. Superman, Justice League behind him. It was a nice teaser, and a lot of these covers give this great, kind of like teaser and or flash to a future episode, future part of the issue. And I like that, we got Wonder Woman with the battle shield and all that. So
the statue too of our friend from the Eastern country.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It was great. It was really a nice cover where you got to see the whole Justice League showcased. I love Jim Lee's take on the Justice League characters. His John Stewart is really dynamic and breathtaking too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, issues opens up with Father Leone in the hospital, and it was interesting seeing about how he is dying from cancer, but it's not just cancer, because when you hear cancer, you automatically think the worst. This is an aggressive cancer, so that's even makes you take it and you escalate it out because he's running out of time. It's now one of those situations where it's not going to be long. He knows, under a year, it's time, and that is something. It incites just an emotion. I think we've all known people who have fought cancer, who have, died from cancer, who have, just dealt with this. And this is a disease that is just, the word itself strikes fear in your heart. And we've gotten some introduction to this really cool guy, and now we know that's it. He's done. It's this guy. He's going to be a short-lived character. This is going to be the last appearance of him.
Also, though, already having a crisis of faith.
Right.
This is a character who's already not really sure of his role. A religious leader who's not so confident, who's already admitted that, if I could take back my vows, I might, I mean, these are things that have been going through this man's head already. And I wonder, obviously, the cancer played into that into some level, but the Vanishings did as
Yeah,
well.
he's got just compounded on compounded of items that would cause the most holiest of men to kind of falter a little bit.
And the relationships with his parishioners
Yeah.
now. Whereas, so I mean, Orr steps in at a time of, and Orr recognizes this. I'm totally convinced that right as we kick into the opening of this, Orr knows, this mercenary is very good at analyzing targets, analyzing situations. He's reading all the warning signs on this guy, and he's looking at him like, a hungry man looks at an appetizer. I mean, it really is that type of...
One of the things I noticed about Orr, and it was funny, honestly, I didn't notice it until future issues with him, his dealings, but you can see it here. What he does is when he's dealing with someone, he antagonizes them. He gets them enraged. He gets them, their blood boiling a little bit. Hits them like at somewhere where there's a sensibility. And it's that whole thing where if I can get an emotional response out of you, I've won the argument. If I can make you angry, I have won. And he does that with him, where he basically, once he lets them know that he knows who he is, that he knows Superman's been visiting him, he kind of starts implying that he's going to want some information. And immediately, Faviolin jumps in there. There's the sanctity of confessional. And it's right there. He's calling him out, gets him that blood going. And I loved seeing that tactic used by Orr. And you see it later on and later on.
Also, though, Orr does it for another reason. Leone's not asking, what are you really doing? What is your real motivation here?
Yeah.
When you get people boiling that emotionally, they might ask that on the surface level, but they don't think heavily about it. They don't think deeply because he's got them thinking other things. So they might ask him, why are you helping me, and that type of thing. But he doesn't delve heavily into that or has big plans for this guy.
It's sleight of hand. It's the whole...
Or knew here what he wanted to do.
Exactly. And that's the thing that, when they first started with this, I kind of, that was one of the first thoughts pop in my head. Are they going to do something here? And it was one of those things where I was hoping no, but I kind of, it was one of those, in the back of your head, you're like, oh, God, no, they're not going to do something that I think they're going to do. But it also served as a nice segue, too.
What did you think they were going to do?
What happened?
You really you thought that they were going that route?
Not in this initial meeting, but
I was going to say
later in this issue. Well, when I first read this, I was like it was like one of those. It was like a spidey sense was tingling. I'm like, this isn't.
Really?
Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say my nose is twitching for a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
You sure you just don't need Tinactin or something?
Sorry, I got you off track.
Yeah.
Oh no problem. But, it was one of those things where I was like, I saw there's something more going on.
But you didn't
here.
think where he was going to go.
Not until later in this issue, though. I did think that.
Okay, I thought you meant from this initial scene. I'm like,
no, not
really?
from this
You
initial
got this
scene.
from? I was going to actually applaud you because I was going to say, really, you found, because I still don't see how you from this would arrive at that conclusion.
It was just something that I was like, something's about. There's going to be more between these two. I was
curious to see where you did discover it in this issue.
Yeah, and I can point out exactly the spot and time.
Yeah, I'd love to know because I think that's interesting. Now, Mandy, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Francis Assisi.
Yeah.
I know we exchanged. I was hoping we got to this last time because I've been so curious as to see what you discovered about this. You had taken a recent vacation and discovered some information about this that you said would be relevant to this discussion.
Yeah. So. Well, when I started rereading this and I came across this panel where it shows Orr's name tag, and he has this name tag that says Francis Assisi on it. And I recognize, St. Francis of Assisi, and I was like, well, why would Azzarello, first of all, choose that name? And why would they make it a point to show that's what his name tag said? And the fact that, Daniel is a priest, there's got to be some kind of relevance there. So I went and the first thing I did was I started doing some research about, Francis Assisi's life, St. Francis of Assisi. And I think in everything that I found, I mean, even before I went on my trip, the biggest thing that I could find really was that there was Francis Assisi had a pretty carefree life, but he still considered himself very religious. But he became seriously ill, and it led to a spiritual crisis. And when he got better, he went and enlisted in the army. So that is the biggest thing that really kind of caught my eye about, just the research that I did beforehand. Now, when I went on my trip, we actually went to Assisi, and we went to St. Francis Basilica. And so, knowing that we were going to talk about this, I really kept my eyes open for anything that might have been relevant. And so we were in the Basilica, and it was, first of all, it was extremely hot. But we were in there, and you walk down one level, and you can go see the tomb of St. Francis of Assisi. And to give you an idea, this guy's been dead for 800 years, and there's still his tomb down there. Now,
Wow.
Before we went down there, our tour guide told us, he says, well, when you go down, there's kind of like a little round walkway. The tomb is sitting in the center of the room, and as you walk around, there are the tombs of his 5 earliest followers on the edges, like on the outside. So his tomb is in the center, and everyone else's is on the outside. So he just basically led us down the stairs, and he says, just go down, take your time, walk around, So I go down, and we're kind of walking around the tomb, and I'm looking at there's where his followers are buried. Their tombs, they have little nameplates above each one of the tombs to say, who they are. And we went and we walked around the tomb and went around the outside, and I still remember the aha moment that I had. The very last one was Father Leone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that is very cool.
Outstanding.
But considering when you first started talking about this, Assisi's whole MO, with the crisis of faith and that type of thing, plays heavily into why Orr would choose that as an identity as well.
Yeah.
But also the fact, though, that really Leone at some point in time does follow Orr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I knew when I saw that, I was like, there has to be a reason why he chose Francis Assisi of all names that he could have, all the names that he could have put on his name tag.
Wow.
That there had to be some kind of reasoning for that, and if he was going to choose that name, there has to be a reason why they chose to feature it in some way. So I kind of went in search of finding some kind of relevance for it. And I had already seen this about the illness and the spiritual crisis and everything, and then we went to Italy and we went to Assisi, and we're in here and we were in the tomb, and we were just, walking around, and I just happened to look up, and I could not tell you the names of the other followers. But I just happened to look up and see that nameplate, and it said Father Leone, and I did this.
Oh, that is cool.
Oh, wow moment.
Yeah, that is very cool.
And it was just, spelled the same and everything, and I was just like, wow. And I had, the people that were with me, they're like, are you okay? And I said, yeah. I'm fine.
Now, did you explain it in the tomb why you were so, oh my God, or did you wait till later?
Okay, first of all, even just being down there, here's a guy who has been dead. He was first of all, the guy was canonized 2 years after he died, which is the fastest ever. But here it is. This is they're celebrating the 800th anniversary or something like that. And there were people down there leaving letters at his tomb and pictures. And so anyways, I was already at a point where I was like, wow, I was having a moment anyways. And then to see that and to come up and some of my friends are like, are you okay? And yeah, I'm fine. Just saw something I really wasn't really expecting. And so I did, for a couple, the people who asked about it, I was explaining it to them and they're like, you got all that from just a name tag? and I said, well, yeah. And they're like, and this was in a comic book? And I said, yeah. And they're like, huh. First of all, it was a comic book. Second of all, a name tag. And, it actually has some relevance in some way. I mean, I don't know if Azzarello was aware of the fact. I mean, I don't know. It seems kind of a big coincidence that Father Leone was one of his followers.
Oh, I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah, I don't think there's any coincidence on that.
I mean, how can that be?
Yeah,
that can't
to choose that name specifically.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing catch, by the way. You get full props on that, and not only that, you get a for that one.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and I'll send you the wipes. But I was looking to see if that picture at the bottom of the page, the end of their discussion. I'm looking to see if
looks
that
like it is.
If that's the basilica.
That's the basilica. I'm guessing.
Oh my gosh, it is.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of indication right there.
Yeah.
This is
and
coincidence.
Also in those earlier, in like those first couple issues of the book where they're actually in the church.
Uh-huh.
After reading this and after being over there and seeing, the architecture of those churches, man, that's a very Franciscan church that he's in. Just the way that it was drawn was, they're very similar. So, they did some research.
Yeah, hoorah.
On this. Yeah, because it is, it almost...
That's an Easter egg, though.
Yeah.
That's really cool. To dig in that deep and find something so hidden in this, because now, this whole sequence has a whole different appeal to me now because of the fact that we got a picture of the basilica there, and then the relationship of Assisi to Leone and all that. That's very cool.
Yeah, it was just a weird thing to see that, and then to be over there, and I had kind of, had it in the back of my mind when we were at the basilica that, hey, I should, keep my ears open for anything I might hear that would kind of fit, and I wasn't expecting I was expecting more to hear something that I could use and not see it. Because that was a part of the tour where, our tour guides couldn't actually go down there with us. So we were in like the main room, and he says, okay, you're going to go down these stairs and you're going to see this. But because it was the tomb and people go down there to pray, they can't go down there.
Wow.
So they allow us to go down there and walk through, but they can't as tour guides go down there. So, but I was just like, okay, I'm going to go down and walk through it and look. And I wasn't at that point really expecting to see anything, but I just happened to, be looking up as we're, coming around the other side of the tomb. And I was like, oh, wow. And of course we're in a church, so I'm trying really hard not to swear. Because I did that earlier in the day, and we weren't actually in the church yet, but I don't know how much you guys know about this, but to actually get to the basilica, you have to walk up a big hill. Wow. And I was like, oh, this is a steep hill, and I was like, oh wow, I really got to watch my language, So, and like I said, it was a very hot day, and we were sucking down water like there was like nobody's business. So, but yeah, I was very shocked, surprised, amazed when I saw that. And I know, Sean, I know that you know that I have been just like dying to tell you about this, but
Oh, that's why I specifically jumped there. And I'm glad I'm glad you didn't tell me via email, because I think it's more fun to find out this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
That's amazing. That's cool.
This is an interesting story to reread, knowing what we know about Superman in this, when you see him in these segments with his silver beach ball. Because he doesn't know it's his.
Yeah.
Which I find that incredibly interesting. With Orr in this, so that's the cause of the vanishing, huh? Or Shings and
Shings.
Well, I liked his, just the fact that Orr, we never see him intimidated, especially with Superman. And it's just, for me, that fits the character so much. This is a mercenary, but he's not just a mercenary. A lot of times, some of the mercenaries out there are nothing but bullies. This isn't. This is a professional. This is an agent. This is somebody who, is a level above just your everyday, hired gun thug. He's able to lay out plans. He's the master chess player. He's just the CIA super agent type thing.
He doesn't intimidate for the sake of intimidating.
Right.
He would intimidate if it would serve the purpose of his objective.
Yeah.
But it would certainly be a calculated thing, and that would be the one, for that particular situation, it would be the appropriate move. So he uses different forms of manipulation to achieve his own goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love just, seeing once again Clark in just the darker shadows and whatnot, a little bit grittier, especially where the story goes and what's going on, what just happened at that time frame. It brings us back to, we go from this bright hospital room back to there. Boom.
Yeah.
That dramatic emotional change within a couple panels. And normally, I admit, I'm the guy who, with the jumping back and forth between time, it does throw me off. It does kind of confuse me sometimes. With these, I really enjoyed them first time through. Second, third read-throughs, I just absolutely loved them because I knew where it was going. I knew what was going to happen. I knew what was coming around the bend. So seeing this set up and, just the laydown between Orr and Superman, because he's sitting there saying, hey, we made Equus. We have, my employers deserve the spoils of war. He wants the vanishing device, but there's no way Clark is going to give that up. But, once again, it's not a threat of kryptonite bullets or anything. He's like, they'll make it difficult. And we see, immediately how they made it difficult, what they did to Superman. It wasn't an empty threat. It wasn't just a bully trying to get his way. No, it was a planning person who knew exactly where and how you hurt Clark Kent, how you hurt Superman. You don't go after him physically because, you know what? He's tough. He can take it. You go after his image. You go after the way people look at him. You go after how he is publicly perceived, because Clark wants to be the hero. He wants to be the savior, but it's not just an ego thing for Clark. It's he wants to do the right thing. And the best way to do the right thing is when people look at him, he inspires hope. He inspires,
Inspires?
Did you say inspires?
Yes, I did.
Inventing all new words.
I thought you said.
He impales you with hope. You will feel the sharp edge of hope diving into you. And
I'll make you smile.
Superman. You know what? It's funny though. I like the fact that even though I had no doubt that Orr was going to play dirty and do that, Clark didn't give in to him.
No.
Because in his case, he is grasping at these people are still alive, but even more importantly in this case, his wife is still alive. And that for him, again, this is one of those moments where this sequence is where I connect it to Kingdom Come again. We saw in Kingdom Come a deep establishment of Lois's loss, what that would do to him. What her death did to him in Kingdom Come. And to see that play out here in a very different way, he's grasping at any possible hope that he can find that maybe this device is the way to get her. the way to find where she is, to bring her back. And it's just huge. And I like that it's not just this story that establishes that, but this sequence is also important too because, Jim, you mentioned before that you were clued in that there was a possibility Father Leone was going to go through what Equus did. And this is the pivotal segment that would leave you that potential clue when we see further development with him, because he reveals right here their relationship with Equus,
right,
and that they loaned Equus. So that's that.
This wasn't the point, but yes.
What I'm saying though is this would set up the clues to that. Is what I'm saying. I'm not saying this was your point, but you didn't have this in the prior scene,
right?
You had to actually read this before you would even know that he was connected in any way.
Now it was heading right back then, and I love how they showed us what Orr's people did. It wasn't a news splash. It wasn't a newspaper. It was Leone, sitting there saying, wait a minute, you're the ones behind the attack on Superman. Right there, Leone's telling us, hey, this is what they did. They did the media blitz. They let the public know what exactly Superman did. And, you think back to like earlier issues where, Clark's talking to Leone about this, the look on people's faces. There's fear in people's eyes and not in the correct people. This is the stuff that caused that fear. It wasn't just when he was over in that country. It's when he's back in America and the regular everyday people found out that Superman got involved in another country's conflict. There's that fear. What if he decides, hey, maybe he can do that here with the U.S. Maybe he's going to throw out the Constitution or, declare martial law on the planet, because there's that fear that people will have of Superman. Granted, you look and you see and you think, hey, Superman is Superman. He's not going to do that. But you think about the world of New K. First thing they did was they banned Kryptonians from the planet. They're like, they're not Superman. They had that fear of that power. Well, right here, we are now seeing where Superman used his power to completely clear out a country, to completely end a war, and had Superman, he could have very easily said, okay, I am now the ruler of this country. Very easy. Nothing would have stopped him. And that's the fear. And once again, wonderful thing on Leone about how he is defending and he is doing the right thing with Superman. It's not just a priest, parishioner type relationship. He's looking for the right thing. He's going to do the right thing because Superman does the right thing. Superman is a good guy. He knows that, if Clark, what he did over there, he's feeling the repercussions. There was probably a light bulb went off in his head saying, oh my God, that's what's going on. There's some of the I'm now, he's probably piecing some pieces together about what is going on with Clark and some of Clark's crisis of faith. So for me, this whole one page was like, oh my God, it was like a wave of just information kind of flushed in my head.
It's funny how my opinion of Orr has changed in rereads. Because I always thought he was a cool character when he was introduced. Like, wow, Orr's... And there's still elements of that with me, but how much I am angry with him, how much I detest him. He's like... he's scum.
Oh, God,
at this
yes.
point. Because this sequence with Leone, where he's telling Leone, I can cure it. And we know after reading it, that there's no intention of curing it. The tests he's running on Leone are not about curing his cancer in any way, shape, or form. And to be rereading this and looking at what this man did and the manipulation here in this case, it really is. He was setting this guy up.
It's more about making the cancer irrelevant.
Well, no, he references harnessing it later.
Yeah.
So it really is in this case. You're right, and I see what you mean by irrelevant, though, too, in the sense that it's not going to kill you per se, but you're still under the. I mean, I don't. Leone would never in a million years say, "Geez, can you make me this?"
And this right here was the
just
sequence,
like RoboCop wouldn't.
Yeah. This, by the way, was the sequel for me. This is where I realized what they were going to do. Now, I didn't know the full extent behind how the cancer is used in the process, but right here, and especially that final panel with him, just his face is covered in shadow. And I was like, just talk about foreshadowing of something grim happening to this guy. I was like, oh my God, they're going to turn him into another Equus. That was the first thought that popped in my head right as I read this sequencing.
I'll admit I didn't think that, and I'm impressed that you did. I thought there was going to be a price to whatever he did. And I didn't know what that price was going to be. So, I mean, I agree with you in the sense of foreboding there. I did not on my first read through think in a million years that he was going to become Equus. I don't know if that was, if it had anything to do with reading it monthly or whatever, but I definitely felt there was going to be a price there. What about you, Mandy? When you first read this through, did you think that there was any hint to...
No, not really. I think when I first read it, I was I'm like, well, what does Orr want with Father Leone anyways? So I think the first time I read it, I was kind of questioning as to, why is this guy even bothering with him? Here's a guy, so, I think the first time it was I was surprised, but then even going back and I was, going back and doing rereads, I'm like, oh, I should have picked up on that. I should have seen that before. But the first time, no, I didn't really pick up on it.
In this next sequence with Father Leone and Superman,
God, yeah.
It's a really important one to me, but one of the things that really struck me on this one, we always talk about how Superman's so in tune with the world. You see all the time that, he flies up into the sky, he can hear everything that's going on. He has to focus to kind of tune out things in order to, be able to focus on specific individuals or events. And, I mean, to have all that stimulus thrown at him. But when you see him in this one-on-one scenario, the fact that this guy personalizes his approach based on the beliefs of this man, knowing that he's already having a crisis of faith, knowing that they've bonded over the fact that they're in similar places right now for different reasons, but still in similar places. It just, to me, when you talk about how cool Superman is and why is he a cool character and what are the strengths of this character, with everything we've seen with these segments with Orr beforehand, we see that Clark is in a place right now where he's making some very difficult decisions. And he's obviously, I think in that first segment with that previous segment with the beach ball, he's already thinking, I want to find a way to use this to go after Lois and the other people that disappeared. So he's already, I think, got that in his mind, but he doesn't know enough about it yet, hasn't thought it all the way through, hasn't done enough research into what he's going to do. But we can already see glimpses of that. But even though he's thinking of crossing those lines, we still see here, this is Superman. This is a very Superman moment to me, character defining. Not all superheroes would approach this way. He did. It's a very tiny thing because it has nothing to do with him being a hero, but yet in some ways it has to do with him being an inspiration.
Right.
So it was cool.
Yeah, and I liked how they went through and gave us a very important tidbit of information in here about how it wasn't just regular people who Clark was making nervous, but the metahuman community with what he had done. And it was just because they're talking about just making each other comfortable. And this was really one of a great time when we're seeing Leone not be impressed, not be in awe of Superman, but actually even kind of provokes him a little bit, kind of tries to intentionally irritate, and or I don't want to say enrage because he didn't want to enrage, but it wasn't what he had before with the oh my God, can you read minds type thing. It was more of a familiarity between the two of them. And once again, segues between sequencing is just an amazing thing for me, and this was a beautiful one.
Before we go to that, though, I want to touch on that one thing with the walking on water.
Yeah.
What struck me there was, if I had the ability to do that, how hard it would be not to. And I don't mean deliberately in front of a priest, but I mean to sit there and change your approach possibilities, at that particular point in time, to be aware of the fact that I could see myself, I would never consciously do it for the sake of, ruining somebody's faith and their beliefs and that type of thing. But I could see myself, screwing up and doing it accidentally, and then afterwards saying, dude, I was approaching a priest. I wasn't even thinking about it. I was spinning across, running across the water because I can run at super speed, and I popped up in front of this priest, and he had this religious moment with me where it made him question his religion. I could so see myself doing that without thinking, and I like to think that. I mean, I'm a pretty considerate person with that type of thing. But I could see myself making that mistake, which was what struck me. It's such a small moment in this, but it really struck me. I'm like, dude is like so emotionally aware of everybody.
It's funny you're saying how you wouldn't do it intentionally. I would. I'd do it for Halloween. You get the long beard, the white robe.
Yeah, but you're a religious fella, though. You wouldn't do it in front of a priest because you know that would be like...
You kidding? That'd be hysterical,
You would
I'm having a flashback right now. We watched the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2 the other night, and there's a scene where Zod walks across the water, and you can see the platform underneath, and it's like he's totally just doing it because he can, and he doesn't care that he's sitting, that there's a guy sitting there fishing that's just thinking he's about to see the end of the world or something.
If there's anyone brave enough to do Sensei Christ of the Whatnot, I would love to see it. For the website, I would love to see it. It would take a very brave listener to attempt that, but you would have my eternal respect.
Oh, you know what?
I got to be honest with you, dude. Just the fact that you say you could do that, I couldn't. I honestly, I will go a lot of places. That's my limit.
Here's the thing. Okay. Now, let me clarify one thing before I have people getting really angry at me. I wouldn't. Yeah, I said I'd do it in front of the priest, but I wouldn't do it pretending to be Christ.
You said you for Halloween,
right? I would dress up in a Christ costume, and it would be kind of funny, that.
But not in front of a priest.
But no. If a priest was there, I'd do it in front of a priest. But
then you were doing it in front of a priest.
But not saying that I am actually Christ. It would be Superman dressed up in a Jesus Christ costume doing a funny joke.
I understand that. But
you realize how confusing you're making this.
Yes, dude. Okay, I got to be honest with you. Okay. I don't care if it's October 31st or not. You're still in a Jesus outfit, walking on water in front of a priest.
Hold on, God.
You're in a Jesus outfit on a pagan holiday.
Yeah. Do you think the pillowcase is going to be like a help or anything like that? Are you going to hand him a Reese's cup and say, hey, dude, I'm kidding?
Yeah, come on. First off, God has a wonderful sense of humor.
How do you know?
Because we are made in God's image. We have great sense of humor. God must have a sense of humor.
That's debatable.
Okay, true. But seriously, there's a way to do a joke and not be sacrilegious and not be insulting. Like,
wait, can I ask you a question? Where was the last mass that you've been at where you've seen Jesus Christ slapstick? Well, you're saying this like this.
I went once the other day.
In college, the priest we had, Father Tim.
Okay.
Father Herb, sorry. Tim was St. Williams.
Right.
Father Herb used to tell jokes from the altar, and it used to have, and used to make, church fun. And he was the guy
who dressed as Christ?
No, he never dressed as Christ.
Hey, guys, it's Jesus. Good to see you.
Hey, he never did that, but he did.
The big JC.
Yeah.
You're fascinating me with this.
There is humor, and you can, have a religious joke and not be sacrilegious. Now there are some very sacrilegious stuff. There's some not, and it's you got to watch how you would do it. So when I'm throwing this out,
I'll actually defend you to our listeners because it's actually the reason why I'm so fascinated by this is how well I know you. I know you are a very religious. You're actually more religious than I am. So I think what it fascinated me, I thought it was more shocking that I would say I would never do that in a million years, and you would come back and say, oh, dude, I'd never touch that with a 10-foot pole. For you to sit there and say, no, I'd be out there in the JC costume running on water. I'm like, I am baffled by this.
Yeah. Now, I wouldn't do like a bloody Christ or something like that.
Because it's so much better if you look like the well.
If you do a funny thing where, but I wouldn't do like there's some that are very inappropriate.
I think it's all the more impressive that you look like one that fully healed himself.
Well, yeah, it's just you're having fun. It's it's Buddy Christ, from Dogma.
Right.
It's that type of humor that it's not truly insulting. It's a laughing with, not a laughing at.
So you're saying you're going to look more like a bobblehead.
Well, say.
I don't know how we got on this tangent.
I
I
don't
was
know,
just,
yeah.
I was so fascinated by the fact
Well,
that
you
even
brought it up with walking on water.
No, because I thought it was so cool that Superman didn't do it because it dawned on me myself, and I do think that's something you would be so excited with your superpowers that I would never in a million years. I wouldn't do that in civilian clothes. You said you would do it in Jesus clothes.
only on Halloween. I would only do Jesus on Halloween. Now,
the Galilean whatnot coming up.
Normally, I probably wouldn't walk on water. I would just fly.
Right.
Just because of that, I wouldn't want people to say, "Oh, he thinks he's like Christ."
Now, would you be dressed in a Jesus costume when you flew to meet the priest? Or, okay.
No, I'd be in my red. I'd be
What
in
if
the
it was
red and
Halloween?
Blue. Tough call. Yeah.
So you're mimicking the Ascension. Wow. All right, let's go on to the Justice League.
Yes, please, let's go on.
I'm so thoroughly frightened at the moment.
Hey, no lightning bolts, okay?
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Just knowing how religious you are, I'm baffled by this.
Religion can be fun.
Buddy Christ of the whatnot. I would love one of you on my dashboard. Aquaman. Speaking of, it's an interesting segue in this one. I really liked Jim Lee's version of Aquaman.
Yeah.
This is one, it's a nice mix of modernizing the iconic costume, which I really think, I don't know what it is more and more, because I'm a big fan of the hook-handed one that Peter David did with the long hair and the beard and all that. I really liked that version a great deal. But this version, all honesty, this to me is a great template for what this character should look like. I love the way that it was designed. It looks very modern. He looks very impressive. There is something regal about him. Because you're supposed to believe this is the king of Atlantis. And he does look like a king in these sequences.
He's the king of the sea.
Yeah. And I like that. I just thought that was something.
The panel where he says, "Do you realize what you're doing?" I mean, I can hear him saying that. Do you, just in his nice little regal King of Atlantis voice, "Do you realize what you're doing?" Almost had a Star Wars feel to it for some reason. I don't know.
A James Earl Jones kind of voice going on.
Do you realize what you're doing?
Arthurian. Yeah. Like the very Arthurian legend as well in the whole thing. Yeah. There was something I really just something about that.
Aquaman definitely has some bass in his voice. He's got that sound to it that, just when he speaks, he commands respect.
Wally looks really impressive. I like his Wally. I like that you see, it's funny, tiny little details strike me. You see Wally's eyebrows in the mask.
You do, don't you?
The eyes. Just really tiny details, but it's a great job on the coloring on that because it matches Wally's hair color. But the way his mask is crafted, it would be in such a way that depending on the positioning of it, the eyebrows would pop out.
Yeah.
And I don't know why tiny little things like that. These masks aren't glued on. He pulls it over his head, or in this case, I guess this would still be the Speed Force generated costume. Because Wally had a period where he could generate his costume through the Speed Force. I don't know if he still does or if he pops it out through the ring now. I keep forgetting. But I know that for a while
I think it's now costume. It's now the special funky material that Barry created that can diminish size. So it's not a Speed Force costume anymore.
He had a period where his costume was pure Speed Force, which was but it didn't look any different. It just that was how it was generated. I don't know. It's just this to me. This whole Justice League. Even John looks very alien, very otherworldly. The way he's sitting, he looks decidedly different. At least in my eyes, he does than the rest of the crew. There is something alien about him. Like if you didn't know him, I'd be a little creeped out. And I like that. I think that distinction is, to me, something interesting.
Throughout all these panels, there's some great usage of the shadows. Especially every time we see Clark, his head is bowed down a little bit, and it's you got the shadow crossing his face, and it's not your usual dun 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 Superman image. With John, it's the same type of deal. As you hit the hammer on the nail there. It's like an alienish look to him that is adding to the creep factor. And Jon Stewart, I really just liked the accusational type, posing, and just the way he's standing there where he's really stepping up saying, "Hey, what are you doing? What's going on here?"
Hit the hammer on the nail there. What are you really going to say?
Why? That's what I was going to say.
I noticed it, but I was like, nope, just let him go.
You stumbled through that.
He's on a
I wonder
roll.
what you were really thinking of saying.
I caught myself, so you'll never find out.
It is funny. I wonder if Superman were really here, if he'd be happy about the dun-da-da. Could you please stop doing that?
You can. I think he'd probably say that's awesome. Because that's the kind of guy he is. That's what he wants to be. He wants to inspire that, that people to rise up and just the hope and the hero and whatnot.
This is a great Batman.
Oh, yeah.
The writing on Batman here, I think, is incredible. I throughout this whole thing, Batman, a very, very supporting player in this. He just very small appearances throughout. But when he appears in this, he makes a lot of impact. And it just Batman's complete dialogue segments, except for a couple of bits where we see some action out of him. But the dialogue so totally matches the detective, and not only that, the detective and friend of Superman.
Yeah.
You know what I find interesting is the difference in their height when they're shown, where he says, Batman says, war has always been a privilege of the wealthy. A lot of times when you see Batman and Superman together, they look to be about the same height.
Well, he's floating in. Superman is.
He is
Take a look in the previous panel.
Yeah.
I don't think it's so much a height difference there.
Is he still floating though?
Because if you see the way he's floating, if you take a look at the I think he's floating down from the platform that he was on.
Yeah. I mean, but even
instead
if he
of the stairs.
Even if he is floating, he's kind of taken this air of superiority by, not standing at their same on the ground.
Oh, I agree.
Definitely agree with.
Like I know what I'm doing, and this is my battle. Whereas if he didn't have such a big problem with what they were trying to say, he would have been down on the ground. It's kind of like, haha, I can fly, you know.
It is. I think one of the reasons why he was floating down, though, if you take a look at the platform he was standing on and the way the stairs are crafted,
yeah,
it does look like the stairs, like they go down one way and then you go into a different direction to further go down to the next level. And it seems like he's coming off the edge of the stairs and just floating down in that direction versus bothering to take himself in the other direction because he can.
But also, it's one of the great way to win an argument is to be physically above or taller or higher in a position of power. So
he does the same thing with John.
Yeah.
Exactly what Mandy's talking about here. He does the same thing with John where John's sitting. As opposed to his initial discussion with which isn't a very Superman thing to do.
Yeah.
Because I take him as the kind of guy that would sit down. Actually, when we see him with Father Leone, we do see that he's very conscientious of the amount of intimidation he presents or the amount of how he's viewed. In this case, he really, I think he's being just as conscientious of how he's viewed, in the sense that he desperately needs them to see things his way.
Yeah.
So you make an excellent point there with the fact that the height difference with Batman there, even though it's because he's floating down, I think it is deliberate.
Oh, definitely. I think it's a definite power play. And it's, once again, we're seeing a different side of Clark. He's trying to keep them at bay. He's trying to handle this himself. This is his situation. He's going to deal with it. And it's one of those, it's a different Clark. It's a different Superman. This isn't the same guy. And it's very well played out here as you were seeing it in his trusted confidants, his team members, his friends, his family, if you will. You think about it. He just lost Lois. Lois has been gone for, probably over almost a year at this point in time. You would think he would have been going more with them, spending more time with them, actually, pulling them in, because, you lose your life, you lose your heart, you're going to have your friends there. It's you think about, whenever somebody's lost someone that they care about, your first reaction is to go to them, to give them the big hug, say, dude, man, I got your back. I'm here for you. Right here, we're seeing that Clark, they probably all did that, and Clark pushed them away. And Clark has continually pushed them away up into this final, almost a confrontational type, reveal that he's having with his quote-unquote friends and teammate. That he's like, hey, stay out of this. This is my deal. I will deal with this. This is my problem, not yours. It's not a Justice League problem. And I think that was just just very telling, especially that final panel of look that Arthur has towards him. That's not fear thing. That's anger. That's, distrust. That's something that you would never think any member of the Justice League would have towards Superman.
Now, this all happened before his initial meeting with Leone, right? Chronologically?
I believe so. Because I think Leone's right before the final...
Because he's coming to Leone because of the fact that everything's kind of come down around
This is
him.
the kind of stuff that he was talking to Leone about.
This led him to Leone, right?
Right.
Okay.
I think.
That's the way I'm reading it, that this chronologically happened before.
Yeah, because what Jean says about is your capacity for grief any greater than theirs or mine. And I can see where that comment would kind of send him to Leone.
Yeah.
Especially after they have that conversation about, does what Clark feel, is that actually love? Where he's really questioning, his emotions. So I can really see where all this has happened before everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I like the time change in this book.
Oh, yeah.
It is one of those things that I think is a strength, that we get fed what Clark's been through all this time, because it adds a lot more impact to the state we see him in the first issue, when you know what he's gone through in order to get there.
Now, I like when we see him back in the Fortress of Solitude, and that's an interesting term to call his fortress, because before it was always his place for reflection, for science experiments and whatnot. Now it truly is the place of solitude. He's living in the fortress. I basically figured he just let people assume Clark Kent disappeared in The Vanishing, and he's been Superman 100% and not gone back to that persona.
Well,
he's
Clark's
there.
with the people in The Vanishing.
Right. Well, at the time, Superman didn't know that. So I'm thinking he just probably assumed let people think that.
Okay.
Because at the time, he didn't know any of that stuff. So I liked seeing just how, it's escalating, he truly is alone in the Fortress of Solitude. And that's adding to just his grief, adding to his pain, adding to his doubts even. Because if you've ever really spent just time alone, sometimes you can get some really deep reflections on life, but sometimes it can just take you into a downward spiral where you're just like, at any given time, you just want to hear another human voice. That's one of the things that prisons have, and POWs have said they've experienced when they're locked away and they can only hear their own voice. Because after a time, you get sick of hearing your own voice, so you're just sitting in silence. And you're sitting in the silence with the thoughts going on in your head. And that literally can, drive you a little bit on the bonker side. Add to it, we got Superman, who we know hears everything that's going on in the world. So now he has no personal, himself. There is no Clark Kent anymore. There is only Kal-El of Krypton, Superman.
Again, it's what we saw in Kingdom Come, to a certain extent. Even when he was working on the farm, granted, he was more dressed like, Clark as a Smallville farm boy, or, that life. But I did not feel under any way that this was the Clark Kent who was the reporter in Metropolis. This is very much him just withdrawing from humanity and just living his life on the farm. This happened again here. Very similar during that time that Magog, if you remember, there was a smear campaign against him by Magog in that story. Where, same thing, where, humanity kind of had turned on him. In this case, we've got a similar situation going on. And again, a missing factor are some of his human connections, like Lois Lane. The people that make him feel like a man, which is a line actually he references in this particular story later on. But I thought this was, it's really interesting how deep this issue is.
Yeah. Now, just that continuations of some of the stuff we saw between him and Arthur, and that especially that final panel where we saw Arthur looking angry. I love we're seeing Clark in there. He's sitting there and he hears them. He knows what's going on, and he starts tunneling through the fortress. And it's, you think about it. Clark broke the Prime Directive. He interfered in the development of another country. Boom, right there. first thing Arthur's thinking is, he did it for that country, what about for my people? And I loved the show of force. It was basically him sitting there face to face with Clark saying, hey, you try something under the sea, you're dealing with me, you're dealing with us. He assembled his army
he's creating
against
the
Superman.
miracles that he told Father Leone he can't. People would expect me to do these miracles. He tried to do it in that country. Right. And in many ways, he made this mistake. And it's part of the problem, I think, actually, with him erasing his mind or, erasing his memory of what he did here is he made the mistake again with that country. It's a mistake that really he didn't learn from because he made himself forget it.
Yeah.
I love the Fortress of Solitude that Jim Lee does here.
Yeah.
That is a very cool-looking fortress. Just similar to the Batcave. Every artist has their interpretation of it, where there's genuine elements where when you look at it, you're like, okay, that's the Batcave. And there are things that distinguish it, like the giant penny and, the Tyrannosaurus Rex and that type of thing that are, just iconic things that you expect there. And the same thing with him in the sense that you see, statues of his Kryptonian heritage and those elements. But there's slight tweaks that are personalized to the artist that I just find interesting. And this is a very good-looking and very rich-looking Fortress of Solitude. It's very today. It's more modern, technology-looking. And I even love the bit with all of the symbols of the heroes where it's showing that almost on some level like he's keeping track of where they are.
Could be. Leading to it's interesting because we're going from the sea to what we get with the final ending sequence, where we have that mystic. She's at that Middle Eastern country, and it's not only just that Middle Eastern country. She's at the S that Orr used as the signal to draw in Superman. That initial sequence, that initial confrontation between Orr and Superman. She's at there, she spits in the ground, and rising up in Metropolis is this giant water monster.
Like she's using it like a totem?
Yeah, that's the channeling. That's the invocation right there. And we'll see later on with the other elemental monsters, they're all coming from that same location, from that same spot where you think about it, there was such an epic one event for Clark in what he did in that country, but also just that invocation of, using, or use the S symbol, not only as it was no longer a symbol of hope, it was no longer this great beacon, bright red on a chest that makes you know you're going to be safe. It was that beacon of death and destruction. It was that, hey, come here, it's time for us to have our little talk. It was, Clark's, if you want to say even walk on the darker side. So it was a great usage of that as the invocation for her magic. Especially we see kind of what her motivation behind this is, and what her intentions behind all of this.
What's an invocation?
Invocation. It's
invocation.
No, invocation, to invoke a spell to conjure.
Jim, it's invocation.
I hate to tell you.
Come on, give me a break, man.
Invocation.
Give me a break, all right? I'm having a bad day.
Hey, I wasn't going to say anything until Sean did. So.
I know. Well, thank you.
You were hoping I would, though.
I knew you would.
I like having a fellow teacher on the show.
And then I can impose my authority as an English teacher.
Before we end this particular issue, I want to just take a quick look back at that double-page spread of Superman with Arthur. That is absolutely stunning and breathtaking as the underwater sequence. I'm a big fan of fish tanks with tropical fish and things like that because, especially when you've got them like with some lighting effects in them, you see some breathtaking colors, and especially with transparent sea life. You'll see the way the light reacts off of their unique colors, and you get images that cannot be duplicated on the surface of the earth. One of my best friends does a lot of underwater photography. He's a diver, and my friend Kurt.
Yeah, I know.
He adores. I'm just saying for they don't know.
Well, you're pointing at me, going, my friend Kurt. I'm like, yeah, I know Kurt does.
Well, I'm talking to you. You're my only visual cue here.
Man, I am off my game today.
Yeah, we're going to talk to the wall. There goes Sean again, talking to the sketch of Firestorm.
But it's a beautiful sketch of Firestorm.
It is a Jamal Igle sketch. Yes. It's very nice. But I was going to talk to you. Although
Make it better conversation from Firestorm.
Although I deserve it for the invocation thing, so I was invoking Firestorm. Now we know what it is. But to me, it's something that's stunning about not only just Jim Lee's art and the pencil work and the inking on this particular, but also the colors. The colors off of that are just incredibly dynamic of the various sea life. Aquaman, I want a unicorn seahorse.
Oh, don't
Not
we
in my
all?
not in my backyard.
Oh, okay.
But
It'd be a little difficult.
yeah, I mean, but how cool. I'm a big fantasy fan. I love fantasy fiction. I love fantasy artwork. And this, to me, they started heading in this direction with Aquaman Sword of Atlantis, where it was a fantasy story, and I wish it was Tad Williams when he did it. I would have loved to have seen that be able to continue on longer. I liked what Kurt Busiek was doing beforehand. When then Tad Williams took over, he tried to take it tweak it a little bit in a different direction, which wasn't anything. I liked both variations. I just felt the Tad Williams thing was just getting its legs, or lack of, depending if you look at these seahorses. But but I thought it was an interesting take. It was the newer Aquaman versus this one, but I don't know. I think there is a possibility of doing a very cool long-term Aquaman fantasy-style story that would work as well. And this artwork, just to me, was... I just thought it was stunning.
We had what, like 4 pages of Aquaman in this story, and I like this dude. I was like, I'd go for this Aquaman.
I want to know what's going on in his head. I want to know, what his motivations are, where he's going. He's got an army with him. Dude knows he's going up against Superman, and boy, is he making his presence known. He brought everybody. I bet you behind that whale is a kitchen sink. I mean, dude brought everything with him. It was really, really impressive. He was making a statement here, and I think he knew deep down that he wasn't going to win there. But he was showing Superman that if you are going to do this, if you are going to get involved with my world, I am going to throw everything at you that I've got. You are going to remember the day that you stepped into the ocean with Arthur from Atlantis. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's not the battles you win, but the battles you lose that just truly define you as a warrior.
Yeah,
that is a moment where it will be a throwdown. It will be one of those throwdowns of biblical proportions that just goes into the memory books for a lifetime.
It's funny. I was really glad that you pointed out, just to compliment you, the totem aspect of the symbol in the, because I didn't. I guess in none of my readings did I see it that way until you pointed it out, and I was like, wow. Yeah, duh. Very cool.
Yeah. I didn't see it either.
Yeah. I thought it was I didn't see it that way at all.
All right, so the blithering idiot found it. Blind squirrel theory.
Can Batman escape? One hint: the worst is yet to come.
They're doing a new version of Jesus Takes the Wheel. It's going to be Sensei Takes the Wheel.
Sensei Takes the Wheel. Take it from my hands. Oh, yeah.
Oh, mental images.
What? Superman 209.
Yay.
This is really a cool. I like the cover here. This is because it shows. I think it mirrors his frustration right now in not knowing what's going on with this vanishing.
What is this thing? What is it? Yeah, and there's just that. Once again, it's you think red, you're thinking rage, and just that that fiery kind of anger. And this is a heavy dominant of the red spectrum on throughout the cover. We don't even get to see the traditional blue outfit. It's the orange, just reddish type thing. So. Yeah. That's that for me. I'm really digging these covers.
Or it's just a reflection of the heat vision off the silver ball.
Could be that too.
You're number one, my friend.
I'm
You're
kidding.
number one.
I'm kidding. Because I agree with you with the anger and the frustration that he's feeling at this point in time. I totally agree with you. I couldn't resist. I was just being a putzster. Yeah. No, you're right. It's definitely a building that we've been seeing throughout this whole thing. Because he wants to know, what really the frustration and rage is coming from. Are these people alive or are they not? Where did they go and why? I need to know what has happened. What deep down, what is the vanishing? What is that? And that's the answer. It's funny when he finds out later, it's like he smack himself in the head. You moron. Why did you?
I knew that.
No.
Well, and the one person who does know is vanished.
Right.
Yeah.
This issue was it was kind of an interesting thing because it was such a heavy fight sequence related, because we get Clark going up against all of the elements. We get, starts off water, earth, fire, wind. They all show up and he's doing the battle, basically with, Mother Earth and whatnot. But throughout it's, you have these huge heavy action and fight sequences, but then throughout we have like parts with him and Leone, and it was just that further enhancement of just Clark's feelings of being an outsider, and even the water elements are hitting him with that. We have this great man who's having this crisis of faith, but we're also seeing some of the motivation behind that crisis of faith, behind some of his stuff's going on. As each one of these events are going on, further and further, he is getting separated from Earth. You have the water creature initially showing up, naturally has to attack the Daily Planet. Everybody does. Superman for the big save. But it's still, as the fight is going on, the creature is doing, his own little psychological warfare. Every single one of these elements are coming in saying, you're an outsider. You're not from this planet. You don't belong here. Leave now. And it's that type of, feeling. That has to weigh on somebody. And especially because of what he's gone through before all this happens, it's further explanation on, okay, why is Superman so different? Why is he looking at things different? What happened to, Clark Kent, the Kansas farm boy? Well, slowly and slowly he's been eaten away at. Slowly the Kryptonian Kal-El is only persona there that is left. There's only just the Superman. There's just the, this iconic hero. There's not the man anymore. There's not the husband. There's not the, reporter, the friend, the, and the various factions, the son. That is Clark Kent. So for me, this was a cool issue in that it was a action-packed, but it was also a cool issue in that you continue seeing where the breakdown of Superman was.
I'd make a great Lex Luthor. Because while you were doing that wonderful speech, and it was great, I was thinking to myself, boy, if I wanted to kill Superman, I'd just paint the Daily Planet globe with gold kryptonite. Let it just drop on him.
That'd be a funny blooper,
But I mean, you're doing this wonderful speech, which I thought was great. I totally agree with everything you just said and all that. But in the meantime, look at this. I'm like, once again, that ball's being knocked off the top of the Daily Planet. The thing's incredibly heavy, I'm sure. You paint that thing in gold kryptonite, he's going to be smushed.
Yeah. Or even just put a piece of kryptonite in the middle of it.
No, paint the whole thing, dude. Don't go for the gusto. This is the problem with these villains. They don't try to accomplish their goals. You load that thing up with gold kryptonite, dude's done. I'm all for overkill.
Okay.
If I was going to go after him.
If you're going to be the evil Norge.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. But I wouldn't do that. I like Superman. Yeah. I might do it to Jesus of the Whatnot, but
hey, you can't do that to Jesus. Jesus Whatnot.
Wow. This episode went in a horrible direction that I never expected.
Yeah.
I do like us talking again, though, about just the sheer elements that he's fighting the elements of the Earth here. This is the essence of our planet that dude is fighting. People talk about their love for the Silver Age Superman, the Superman that could move planets, the Superman that, did you read Kryptonite ever? Did you get that Kryptonite Nevermore?
I got it, but I haven't read it yet.
Okay. It's just, I won't spoil anything from that, but it was just a great example of, Kryptonite is, obviously by the title of it, Kryptonite is Nevermore. And just how elements of that changed this character and how all-powerful he could potentially come. It's just really interesting to me. Actually, prior to that, dude was even more powerful prior to that. He's one of these characters that we've seen do these amazing things with natural element, like moving. How do you move a planet? But yet
Very
he's done
carefully.
it. Yeah, exactly. But this guy's done that. And this battle in particular was, to me, probably one of my favorite in the whole series. The big bad that we eventually see later in the big reveal. For as good as that was, I thought this battle for the elements in particular, it showed not only how powerful this guy is, but his state of mind.
Yeah. He's throwing
Yeah.
down big time. And it's
he's throwing down psychologically, though. And he takes a pretty big gamble during this.
Yeah, the super bluff is awesome. But I
Super
like
bluff.
I like some of the interaction between Leone and Clark in this, especially the one sequence where Leone's like, "Hey, maybe you should just go home and have a good cry." There's a healing behind crying. There is that healing behind that, just that emotional release, and that's a big thing where we see Clark saying that he doesn't know if he can. He hasn't cried yet, and he doesn't know if he really can. And that, for me, was a whoa kind of moment because.
But we saw him crying in so many pictures. Remember how all the criticism of that?
Yeah.
When is Superman going to stop crying?
Well, hey, real men can cry. And that's the thing that was one of the things I always...
Remember that teaser image of him crying with Wonder Woman? Superman.
What now?
There was, you wouldn't know about this because of when you kicked into reading. What was it? Was that for Infinite Crisis? Was that the teaser for that?
Yes.
The teaser image for Infinite Crisis, am I thinking of this right?
He's sitting there and he's holding her. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's crying.
Yeah.
Or she's holding him, isn't that it?
Oh, that was for Final Crisis.
Final Crisis, yes.
But is he really crying?
Well,
Or is he just distraught?
I don't know.
Yeah. He looked like he was...
I did see that. That was the one that had the Statue of Liberty, right?
Yeah. There'd been a decent amount leading up to that, though. The criticism was that there'd been a decent amount of crying from the character prior to that in various appearances. Which, I mean...
Stop your crying already.
Yeah, it didn't bother me. I just thought it was funny because it was at one of the... not just one, it was a couple DC Nation panels that you and I were at where people were saying, when is Superman going to finally stop crying? So it's interesting for him to talk about now that he can't cry.
Well, this would have actually been before all that, though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So he learned how to cry.
Maybe, this is maybe where he learned how to cry.
Well, maybe because of this story, he started trying too hard.
Yeah. Once you get started on something, a lot of times you find it harder to stop.
Especially if you bottle those things up like he does.
Yeah.
He actually, that's honestly, I was just joking about that, but he is a character who you would think probably does bottle up a lot because he has to put on facades a lot of times to inspire and deliver the message that he wants to. He is very much. It's funny how similar he and Batman are in that respect. Mm-hmm. Batman goes more for the darkness and for intimidation, and that criminals are superstitious, and he's got to keep that dark image. He sticks to the shadows and wants to be something almost supernatural to people. But Superman, on his end, really has to make sure that he watches how he reacts and talks to people, the presence that he makes. You see it with Robert Leone in this quite a bit. It's a very natural Superman response to make sure that he's careful in how people view him. They are very similar for how different they are. When you talk about them being the opposite sides of the same coin, it's very true.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that really I was thinking about throughout all of this is how come we haven't seen any of Ma or Pa Kent? And it was this sequence that really got me thinking why we didn't see them, because Clark doesn't want to confront his emotions. He doesn't want to bring out the pain, so he knows if he goes and sees Ma and Pa Kent, they're gonna, it's gonna be that flood of emotion. There's, when you're sitting there and you're, face to face with your mom and dad, especially the kind of relationship he had with them, there's no way he could, make it, shut them out or block them out. So if he's there face to face with them, it's going to open up. The only way he can deal with this is to keep his distance from them.
I never noticed that, but there really is. Is there any reference to them?
No.
That's interesting.
Not at all.
Yeah. I guess it's funny that I'm glad you pointed that out, because I guess I never noticed it. So it wasn't something that I guess had impact on me that they weren't there. So it didn't affect me that way, but I wonder if it did other people. I don't know. That was interesting that you caught that. Good catch. It's, yeah.
Thank you. Pat on the back. Woohoo! Yeah, but as I said, she's just using that the totem to call forth the powers of the earth, and then she goes right from water. Then when water doesn't work, she goes to fire. When fire starts going down, it's earth, and then when earth is going down, it's wind, and it's one boom, boom, boom after another. And for me, I really dig that. And she was one of those characters where I was sitting there and I'm looking at her, and she's got a lot of the inner dialogue, but it's not really anything too enlightening as to who she is. We didn't have a name for her yet, or at least I didn't. I don't know if you knew who she was, or I didn't know if she was a long-running character, if this was the introduction of her. But it was the cool thing.
Well, again, I think very similar to what he did with Francis of Assisi, he's pulling from religious historical figures.
Right.
Because she, obviously we find out she has a deep-rooted connection. This is Delilah, Samson and Delilah. But not only was she Delilah, she's been multiple figures in similar situations throughout history.
Yeah.
Depending on, which story that you're referencing at the time.
Depending on which god even. Because, when we see her dealing with Diana, Diana pulls from ancient Greek mythology to call her by that name. And so this is a person who's been around,
through various religions,
right,
and had those connections. So I think when you're pulling from the elements of Earth, you're pulling from that. You're really pulling at the spiritual core of the Earth here.
Yeah,
this story is very interconnected with that.
She's like Gaia. She is the spirit of the Earth. Naturally, that's what made the creation of these monsters and their usage and the ultimate, in the end, how he takes them down, because he's using his powers against them. He's using, super breath, heat vision, punching, power. He's using just the traditional quote unquote Superman fighting techniques, to defeat these things. But in the end, he's got to go a different place.
I love how that when it's almost like Clark begins to understand her interconnections with all this, because when he uses his super breath, she actually is shut down by it.
Yeah.
Which was interesting to see that things that he was doing were having effects on her. Now, did you take that there to be, when he started, doing the whoo, that he saw her, or that was because he had an effect on the fire element?
Initially, I just took it that he just had the effect on the fire element. But he was going,
But she had a reaction to it.
She had a reaction to it. And then she had to come back with her own breath, and her own type of power, because it was, she got hit. She had to fight back immediately because she knew fire was going down. Fire is going down. Okay, you want to invoke your wind? Let me invoke my wind now.
Okay.
It's that kind of, tit for tat type thing.
Okay. So you were taking it as not that she was having a negative reaction to it, that she was initiating another reaction.
Yeah,
which
it
makes
was a
sense
counter.
with what we
She was
see.
doing an attack, counterattack type thing.
That's cool.
Use his own power against him, because he threw out the super wind, so she's going to channel the super wind and fire right back at him. That's how
the force of wind from the earth, though.
Right.
Again, she's pulling elemental forces from the earth. It wasn't his wind that she was channeling; it was the winds from the earth, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was interesting.
Now, when she finally invokes Earth, that was something I was like, oh, wow. Because that's another huge, iconic element that they pull from. Mount Rushmore comes alive and starts attacking Superman.
It's a four-headed monster.
Yes. Or five-headed if you believe in the Where's Whatnot Now, where my face is up there. Whatever. And whatever one you want to use, you can go with the traditional or you can go with the new age.
It's a four-headed monster.
Yeah, well, I like to think that my head is hidden around the backside and you can't see it. That's how I like to think.
I know which backside.
Just call yourself a patootie.
Open mouth, insert foot.
Jim just called himself a derriere.
Sorry.
And since he said it, it is.
That was a good one. I gotta admit, that was a good one. And it's, the funny thing is, as I'm saying it, usually I'm pretty good at have that no.
Pretty well, yeah.
This one, I completely just threw it out there, and I'm like, haha, being funny. Oh God, I just said that. I was like, oh my Lord.
Oh wow.
I did like seeing the elements band together. You know, she starts to realize that she starts coordinating her attacks and realizing that by themselves, on their own, it's just not working. So, it's almost like, is that her controlling it at this point?
Yes,
or
that's how I took it.
Because
Yeah.
they're saying, my brothers, the foreigner has defied us. The blood we spill then will be on his hands before we tear them from his arms. So is she, like, she's bringing them about, but they do have some kind of spiritual presence, right? Or how are you guys reading that? Because that was the part where I started noticing that this read through. I'm like, well, there is some, it looks like some conscious thought there where are they banding together, or is she doing it? Or is it some combination of the two, like a symbiotic relationship?
I'll tell you, initially I was thinking it was her, in the driver's seat. But, to be honest, as you're talking, it does make sense. It would make sense that these are a form of a sentient type life that comes from the earth. And all she did was call them forth.
I think that she has a connection to them, though, so I don't think it's as simple as she called them forth and they're on their own, because she's obviously in tune with the battle and what's going on, that she's able to react to it.
Right.
So, I mean, we do see clearly that she, on some level, is able to perceive what is happening, but the way that they're talking, I don't think she's doing that for show.
No, there's definitely because it's
not
definitely a third party,
we.
Right? There's definitely a third party involved here. That it's not just her. There's maybe the brothers, the four, are one life force in four bodies, or they could be four separate entities.
But isn't this pulling? I mean, like Diana has a big belief in Gaia and this concept of the Earth being a living force, that there is a life force in there, that we've got to protect Mother Earth. Are these elements of the essence of Mother Earth that he's fighting, that she has a connection with, she's able to commune with, to communicate with? Is that what we're seeing here? Because the way that they're talking, I think it's more than her. I don't think that's her talking there. I really do think it's them.
I think we got it.
And that
I think it's them.
Yeah. But I do think that they communicate with her on some level.
Well, there's a definite connection because, when we get to the super bluff, it isn't just them who kill off the ended. Right. It is her who also ends the power to them, or she ends the spell, or it's like one of those things. Are
you going to say what he says?
Oh God, yes, I have that.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay,
I was going to do it if you weren't.
Because they're threatening as these four elements are doing, and they're doing actually a really good job to defeat Superman as you go after what hurts him. Killing innocent lives would hurt him normally, and normally you would have an advantage, but he throws down the super bluff. After you kill everyone, I will burn off your ozone and tear away your atmosphere. I will vaporize your oceans, and I will break you apart with my bare hands. I will scatter you, and you won't be no more. Then reluctantly, I will find a new home as a foreigner. And I was just like, wow, that is not our traditional Superman. And that was just a huge hoorah moment.
The key there is I will reluctantly find a new home. Because I liked that moment. Even through that, he's saying, this is not something I want to do. This is something that you're making me do. And that was an interesting point that he was telling them, because I think that's the key to the bluff.
Yeah.
If he had just made it seem like it was so easy for him to do that was something that he wants, then I don't think it would have worked. The key was that he honestly says, I will reluctantly find a new home. This is my home. Look what you're making me do by the position you're putting me in. He's basically saying, don't put me in this position. You will not like how it turns out.
Yeah, and even like just the fact that he says, after you kill everyone, that's when I will do this. So they're like saying, we'll destroy the world, we'll kill off all the populations. Like, fine. You'll do what you got to do. I'll do what I got to do. And that is that's a scarier bluff, really. You think about it. When you get somebody who's puffing up their chest and they're throwing out the bravado about how much of a tough guy they are, that's not as scary as the guy who's like, okay, we're both going to throw down here. This is going to go nasty for both of us.
This is the Superman that in Superman the movie, when Lois's car falls into the crevice and she dies at that moment. This is the guy that rage that you saw from him in those moments, the sheer screaming when Jor-El is pleading with him, my son, you can't do, going through the history of how you cannot affect the Earth. You cannot change history. You cannot, he has the power to do these things, but he can't. That's that guy right there. That's the same guy we're seeing in that moment. Lois is dead here. I am telling you, I don't believe he could have had this same conversation if Lois were alive. I mean, at this point, he doesn't know 100% where Lois is. She's gone through the vanishing. That's what worked for me so much in this case, because you sit there and say, is this in character for Superman to do this? I don't know if he could have pulled off the super bluff if Lois was alive. If Lois
was there
on Earth at that moment.
Yeah, if Clark
It
Kent
worked for
was
me
there,
on a deep
right.
level because of the fact that we've seen this Superman that's separating himself because his wife is gone. He does not know. He's going on. There's a point in time where we see him in the story go on faith that his wife is alive. I think when he starts to understand the technology and what really happened, he starts to gain a faith and a hope that his wife is alive, that these people are alive still. He hasn't reached that point yet.
No, and this all occurred before he first started talking to Father Leone as well.
Right.
Which is another interesting point, because it is his conversations with Leone that, drive this faith in him, that starts to bring back the Clark Kent that we know, that starts to bring back our Superman.
This closing segment where her frustration and sister,
oh God,
your tears do not belong on the sand, but on my shoulder. Oh, and with Wonder Woman's deep connection with the Earth, with that, I mean, especially with the way that she's the Gumby of superheroes, the way that she's been created. I mean, I mean, it's one of those things with her. I love Wonder Woman. I say that, but I adore this character. I think it is. She came from this Earth.
Yeah, this is who she is. So I really love the fact that not only just because it's Wonder Woman and it needs to be one of the Trinity. One of the things that we talked about earlier about not seeing the Superman's Rogues Gallery, in this, but we are seeing the DC heroes. Mm-hmm. So whereas with the Batman story, we saw the DC hero, we saw his villains. With this one, we're seeing the heroes. We're seeing these people who are connected to Superman more than anyone else, and how he is dealing with it.
And I don't think, to defend Daryl on this one, I don't think Daryl was saying that they fit in this story. Matter of fact, I know Daryl wasn't saying that. What Daryl was saying is, before reading this story, his expectations were that there would be a story that would lead to, because he was saying that the story would be crafted for the artist. So he was saying that the story would naturally lead to situations where you would get to see his rogues gallery.
Right.
I think instead what happened was the story was crafted in such a way where the interaction with the heroes makes more sense.
Yeah.
So I agree with you in the sense that we're seeing these iconic heroes there. But I mean, I just wanted to kind of clarify, because I thought his phone call I was glad that he called, because as we had mentioned on the first part of this, I was thinking this was going to be one of those stories where I think he's one of many different opinions on this book. I think there are people read this and reacted to it in a lot of different ways, just from what I've seen across the internet since I read the story initially way back when. So it's kind of interesting. It's funny, when we're done talking about this, I do want to talk about this story I talked about how I would love to see, this probably would have read better, at least in my eyes, as a miniseries. Although I want to correct one thing there, because I did read this again in preparation for this.
Oh, yeah.
And it was funny, when I read this again, there's pivotal elements at the end that did stick in continuity afterwards. And we'll talk about that when we get to them, which probably won't be in this part. But why don't we jump on to Superman 210?
210.
This is probably my favorite cover of the batch.
That's a nice cover.
Just seeing him with Wonder Woman, I think it's a very powerful Wonder Woman at that point. The knife becomes such a crucial part of this story that plays throughout from here until the end of the story. But it was interesting to see just the magic lasso
Yeah.
Around Superman, and just wondering what this battle is going to look like. I think we've seen variations on this battle so many times, but
it's always a good visual, though.
Especially when writers and artists get creative with it. And this was another creative example because I felt we got something very different here.
Now, the opening story with Father Leone, and it's a dream sequence, and pretty much I knew from the beginning, you kind of had that vibe that it was going to be a dream sequence, and I liked how it played off, once again, a little bit darker Superman as he's standing at the edge. Trust me, kind of like playing off of that whole stuff we talked about with the religious connotations that Superman wouldn't actually do, but as, it's also playing off of Leone's crisis of faith. Because this is the guy who he wants to believe. He wants the cure, and like, can you cure me? If you believe, I can. It was just that really cool, just moments. Kind of that he takes the leap of faith, and Superman catches him, and it's that whole glorious, yes, everything's good, and then it just turns really ugly, really fast, really nasty. And for me, that was just a great way to play out, this dream sequence.
Superman's carrying himself in the manner that Leone was expecting when he first met him, too, I thought was a key to that sequence.
Yeah.
Because you see visually that Superman is doing things that are so out of character from him in that sequence. And it really does show that in spite of the fact that we are seeing a Superman who's being deeply affected by the loss of Lois, Superman is still there. In this dream sequence, he's not. That is not Superman.
Right.
It's clearly not Superman. And it's funny how, for me, that really is a perversion of Superman in that dream.
Yeah, because he's doing the things that we said he never would do.
Right.
He's playing off of his faith. He's toying with him. He lets him free fall a little bit before he finally catches him. And then we see him morph into Equus, which, once again, just beautiful foreshadowing as to the future. And I don't know, I really digged it. It was a great way to open up this issue, great way just to show and introduce, not introduce, but continue on the story of Leone as well as Orr. And a great way to get Leone out of his apartment, onto his street, talking, and then once again, you bring in Orr. And Orr is standing there, he's watching him, he's waiting, he's seeing. Heck, there may have been a dream machine that Orr was pumping into him. Who knows? There could have been something added on that Orr was doing to him. This could be some type of really deep CIA, spook move that he's doing with the, hidden microphones or subconscious type of messages. This dude is connected.
He injected him.
Well, that comes later.
Mm-hmm.
In the initial, when he met him in the hospital, he didn't? Oh, he just pulled blood?
He drew blood.
Yeah.
That was the blood draw. That was to test him out,
right.
Make sure they could use him.
So he didn't actually put anything in.
He didn't put anything until the ending here. And once again, that was another scene where just we get these two, sitting there. Well, one, he's puking blood. Now, when you start puking blood, that's not a good thing. I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to be one, but even I know that's not a good sign. And I like the fact that Leone kind of recognizes this is not a good thing. Things are going bad. And even Orr sees it when he has their little tete-a-tete, where he's talking to him. He sees the blood on, the little traces of the blood that he has. He knows what's going on. He knows we're getting near the end of it. It's time for us, to start, doing more of a manipulation on this guy. I got to start putting the pressure on. One, I may run out of time if I'm not careful. Two, he's prepped and ready to go.
It is interesting, again, that chronologically we see that Orr has met these people before he's having this conversation with Leone. So the time passage in this story takes place over a pretty long stretch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was interesting because, well, one of the things, just as you're saying, the flip-flopping on the time, but the other thing I did like, it was a couple of Orr's lines. We talk about how he is an SOB, and we really hate him, but the one line that he's got in there that I just absolutely loved, and I've actually used it at work now, is, that fan, the one that gets hit, well, it's about to be buried. And that's a great mindset to get you thinking. And once you start thinking, what fan? Oh, okay, yeah. This is going to be something nasty coming down the pipeline. And I like once again, it was just a very humanistic side of him.
As opposed to the other?
Right.
Nasty. No, I'm just saying, as opposed to the other nasty things that have already happened.
Right. Well,
because this story, oh my God, the elements of the earth came out and started attacking him.
Yeah, well, and it's not only that, but think about it. Look at every nasty thing that has happened so far. If he's saying that's nothing compared to what is coming, that is a huge statement. That is a bold, brash statement. And there's never a point in time in dealing with Aura that you think he's embellishing at all. He is telling you the truth. He is telling you exactly how it's laid out. Now, the dealings with, initially the Diana, Delilah, Halcyon, whichever version you want to use with her, the Mystic, whoever you want to call her. I call her all different things throughout.
Delilah works for me.
Delilah.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay. Because the Samson reference after that, Halcyon's great and all, but I actually always really liked the story of Samson and Delilah.
Yeah.
Delilah. So I jumped at that when that was. I'm like, this is Delilah, amongst other people, which is
Delilah.
Halcyon anyway.
I won't sing, I promise, because I really enjoyed just the usage of. These were the correct characters to use in that, and that was just a great pullout. That not only was it Delilah, it was also I can't think of her name who killed John the Baptist. They're saying it's the same thing, the same one. And even the poet king, who I believe they're referring to David. So this is a female character who's been throughout multiple. Biblical, serious, heavy, hardcore biblical references throughout time. And as we said, Greek mythology, with Diana's reference to her. This is a epic, type of person. So naturally, she's going to be involved in this. And I thought that was just a cool way to show us who we're dealing with. This isn't just another mystic. This isn't just another, magic thrower who's got some, mojo. This is somebody of reckoning. And...
Well, and Orr's motivation for going to them makes a whole bunch of sense. Because he's been hired to be a mercenary. One of the things he was supposed to do was to recover the Silver Beach Ball.
Yeah.
And he hasn't been able to do that. And if Superman discovers what it's for, he'll probably never be able to do that. So at this point, he's looking at, well, if I can get Wonder Woman and him to duke it out, well, I can get the Silver Beach Ball.
Yeah. It's all pure his own goals. But once again, I said earlier how he likes to provoke, and you get somebody on the edge when you think. He walked right into there. He's talking to an immortal and an Amazon, and he tells him, hey, wow, this place is dirty. Maybe why don't you grab a broom and sweep up? Now, I'm an idiot when it comes to women. I've said a lot of stupid things in my lifetime, but even I know you don't say that. That's one of the things Yeah, and...
No. Don't tell me what to do.
Even throwing out the,
Least of all, to pick up a broom.
I love this guy for that, because once again, he's put them on the offensive. He's made them lash out. So they're no longer thinking that he's after the Silver Beach Ball. They're not thinking those ways because they're now looking at who is this guy. I'm going to, cut out his tongue and use his tongue to sweep up here. It's throwing them off. It's the deception type thing. I love when this guy does this type of stuff. This is some really, really clever writing.
Well, but he tells them that he's after that they need to stop the Silver Beach Ball. I mean, right after that whole segment when he builds into them, his exact input is he's telling them all about the advice. And he tells them that he's got the device, which they were ready to go after Superman before all of that. But then he clues them in on the fact not only does he have the device, which obviously they're already onto that fact, but what happens when he figures it out? And, they're worried about more vanishings. This guy is going to continue to do that. And not only more vanishings, but what is he going to do to himself in the process? Because Clark's at this point, at least in their eyes, that unstable friend who is becoming self-destructive. And that's by design, not by Clark's design. Orr and his crew have done a really great job of crafting this picture of him as well.
Right.
Because I do think Clark's a lot more stable than he's being publicly perceived here.
publicly and privately. His friends are seeing an unstable Superman. Right. They're seeing the different guy who normally would pull them in on their actions, who normally would very reluctantly take on a big responsibility like this. This would be a thing where he wouldn't want people to think this type of stuff about him. He wouldn't want them to think he was being all-powerful or trying to impose his will on everybody. So to prevent that from happening, he would be a little bit more open with the Justice League. Now he's closed off. Now he's standoffish. And it's
because they would never approve of what he's doing.
What he's planning on doing.
But he knows he can analyze that technology. He knows he can get to the root of it. I think that pivotal cover we were joking about before with the red glow, is a great example of, Clark digging through the insides of that thing to find out what makes it tick. Which is something we see very much so becomes a part of this story. Because people do perceive him here as being a little off his rocker.
Yeah, it's because it was funny because I was seeing, when I first read through this, especially that final panel with her, that look in her eyes, it kind of, to me, felt like that's when she figured out what he was planning on doing. Right then and there. Not just she's thinking, what is he going to do? I have to look in on. Right there, she figured out that he was going to figure out how to concentrate it, focus it, and only use it on himself.
But she also is worried about collateral damage.
Right. But see...
I do agree. Wait, I'm not disputing you at all. I agree with you. She's worried on a very personal level. What is he going to do to himself? But not only that, does he really understand this technology? Does he? Because none of them realize what the technology is and where it's from. I think the key pivotal decision on why Superman decides to use it on himself is because he figures out exactly where it's from.
Yeah, he figures out. He finally, puts all the final pieces together. But it was I read that differently last time. Well, every time I've read these things, I see little bits, and that was a cool just reality. Now, the final sequence between, final for this one, of Leone and Orr, where we're seeing him out there, and he does the collapsing, and he pulls out and does the injection in him. It was funny because I didn't see exactly where that was leading. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a beautiful, beautiful swerve. I was thinking maybe that was a prep thing for what they're planning on doing to him in the future, or so. I did not think of what it actually was, and I was just like, wow, that's a nice little add-on, extra little bonus type thing.
Now the question is, when he injects him with that, do you think that hits him just physically, or do you think it hits him emotionally too?
I was thinking of it as a physical type hitter, kind of either a enzyme type, we know he gets pumped with some serious mojo. And that was the beginning of the pumping, to kind of he needs him alive still. But it was also, of course, we find out later, it's a tracking device that he's injecting in him, which I thought was brilliant. Now, interesting segments coming up between Batman and Superman. And this is one of those ones where when I was reading it the first time, I read this a couple times, that initial read through, just because I'm like, am I seeing everything I'm seeing here? Is there something more here? Because I love just this interaction between the two of them, just this great moments where, it's your typical Batman moment. Joker's throwing, some female off the roof, but instead of Batman swooping in, it's Superman for the rescue. Mm-hmm. And immediately Bruce is like, hey, what are you doing here?
That was mine.
But I think where Clark said making your job look easy, Clark was deliberately antagonizing him. So Batman, he is respecting the detective here. Let's see what I can do to take him a little bit off his game so he doesn't catch on to what I'm doing, but maybe later he'll reflect on it.
Yeah.
And recognize he manipulated the master manipulator.
I know.
That tells you how well he knew Batman. He played him long enough that it would take Batman some time before he really was reflecting on it to recognize what Clark was really doing. That shows you the respect that he has for the man.
Yeah, and that for me was just a huge throwing off the game because, he enrages him, he takes a swing, he moves out of the way with the super speed. But not only that, he throws out the throw another, and I promise you I won't move, and that every bone in your hand will be broken. That's not a Superman thing to say. That is so anti-Superman, he wouldn't do that. He gets in fights with regular people, and he flinches just so they don't, so that doesn't happen, so he doesn't break their hands. Smallville had that really cool football episode where Clark started playing football. Jonathan's Jonathan's like, oh, you can't do it. He's like, you don't understand. Every single game, I got to flinch so people don't get hurt. And this is the young Clark Kent thinking this type of stuff where every play, he can't just focus purely on the game. He's got to know someone's hitting him. Okay, so I got to twist to make it look like I'm actually moving with the hit. Okay, that's a good enough hit. Let me go down with this hit. It's just that really type of moments I was ringing, and I'm like, that's not Clark. What the? And it really threw me off. And that's why I read it a couple times. And exactly what you said about how he was throwing him off his game. I was like, oh my God, that's the same thing Orr type of stuff. Orr does. You throw your person off the game. I love that. I was just eating that up. Oh, man.
It is funny when he calls himself Kal-El. It also adds another reason why he wasn't visiting his parents at this point in time. Because he needed to separate himself in order to do what he needs to do.
Yeah.
You know, how alien the world feels to him without Lois. And it's funny.
And I also think he had to separate himself from his friend Bruce Wayne. That's another thing. That's a powerful friendship there. And even that final smoke,
but he's doing something pivotal here with Bruce. I don't think he's separating himself as much as you think here. In the sense that I think he's separating himself to accomplish his goal with Bruce here, but he's actually embracing him a lot more than you think. Because what he's trying to do is leave his friend with a memorable impression that will help him to become something more, that will help him to pick up the slack for when he's gone. Clark is planning for what happens if I don't come back. What happens if I can't come back? What happens if I'm wrong? Clark is well aware that even though he's at this point figured out, because by this point in this sequence right here, he knows
what's going to happen. He knows exactly what the device is, how to trigger it, and who built it. He knows, well, he doesn't know all the big stories, but he knows the big story behind the beach ball.
So he knows enough that he knows I'm going to activate this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm taking at this point, too, he also knows that he is responsible.
Yes. Yeah, that's how I read it as well.
Because he's the only mind that could have created it. I mean, we see that reference here at this point. So he is doing what he can right here to leave Bruce with something, to distance himself from Bruce enough that Bruce won't put the pieces together in enough time to be able to stop him, because he knows he will.
Right.
He knows when the detective starts to wrap his head around it, he'll figure it out. So I think he's doing some things here on purpose. So I think that distancing is more deliberate than in the sense that he's doing it out of anger or out of anything else. I think he's, though, trying to – the sequences he's saying, I can't do that. You're the best, but I need you to be better. I need to know that you'll try to find peace. He wants Bruce to have that something, to be that something he knows he can be. That almost like the Bruce can't be there can't be two sides to the coin anymore. Bruce needs to be the whole coin.
Yeah. Now, one of the things a theory I was toying around with was, could Clark be trying to show a darker persona to Bruce, to show him what, kind of how Bruce is perceived by the other hero community, maybe as a motivation to show, hey, this is the dark side. This is what you're showing. Do you want to, is this how you want to be perceived type thing? Kind of maybe like a little bit of a reverse psychology. Not only throwing him off the game to buy him the time he needs, but also maybe giving him that final life lesson. Well, what could probably be the final life lesson he is telling Bruce.
I think he's using public perception of him right now and Justice League perception of him to his advantage. So I never took it as being – I'm just giving an honest answer to your question. I might be wrong there too. I took it, though, as Clark was well aware of, okay, this is where the media is putting me. This is the question mark the Justice League has about me right now. So let me amp that up and use it right now for Bruce, because Bruce figures it out.
Yeah.
Bruce knows he was swerved.
Yeah. He knows he was played.
And Clark knew – he was only going to be able to pull this off for a very limited amount of time with Bruce, but he was buying himself just the time he needed for that. So I don't think it was on that level. I think he wanted Bruce to figure out that he was just playing all along, and that the pivotal words are when he says that I want you to be something better. He was really trying to help his friend find peace and step up.
Yeah. Now, I
don't think though the element was how Bruce was perceived. I think he was more concerned with Bruce's internal struggle than his external appearance.
Well, the external appearance is a subset of the internal struggle.
No,
there
not
is
always.
a little
No,
bit of because that's
no, because that's no. Then you don't understand Batman. Batman's external appearance is the way that he wants the criminal element to perceive him as a way to have advantage over them because he doesn't have the powers Superman does. That's nothing to do with his internal struggle. He uses the bat. He uses that element as a way to put fear into them. That fear, that intimidation, that motivation is a tool he uses. Criminals are a superstitious, cowardly lot. But that's not about his internal struggle. His internal struggle is why he's even bothering to do any of it at all.
but it's a darkness internal struggle that Clark is worried about for his friend. It's worried about that the darkness
you were
going to
saying
consume
is Clark
him.
trying to show him how he's perceived externally. I don't think that. I think Clark is more. I agree. I actually agree with what you just said now.
Okay.
You're saying right now that Clark is concerned with how he is internally.
Right.
I agree with you. You were saying before, though, that Clark was trying to show him how he's perceived externally, and I don't think that's what Clark's going for. I agree with what you just said now, 110%. Bruce's external perception he needs as a tool, and he can't give that up.
But the problem is with that external darkness and the internal darkness is sometimes you have the meshing of it. You can't always keep it separate. You can't always, he has this dark knight persona, this this darkness that he's fighting from, and he has inside him a darkness that the whole thing of Batman was born out of darkness. Mm-hmm. If he's pushing out this darkness as well, some of that will come into him. Even that the comment he made about, when Bruce has his mask on, he's like, Bruce, he's like, call me Bruce. He's like, Bruce is just a mask. It's that ultimate, throwdown of who is the true Batman. Is the Batman or is it Bruce Wayne? Which is the true personality? Right there, Clark is calling him out, saying, hey, watch it, or Batman will be who you are. The Dark Knight, this creature who fights from the darkness, is who you're going to become if you're not careful.
No, Batman's just a mask. See, and I disagree with him there. I disagree with what he's saying. Because,
but I think that's what Superman's warning, trying to give that final message, that final warning to his friend, watch it or the darkness will become you and Bruce will become the disguise. That's what
does Clark have some fear that that's what's happening to him?
Well, it is happening to him.
Yeah.
By the fact that he's referencing himself as Kal-El.
Yeah.
That's
and
definitely...
the fact that we haven't seen Ma and Pa Kent, and we haven't, what we haven't seen.
Well, his connection to humanity has definitely been an issue for him throughout this.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Because he feels he doesn't understand them. He refers to the mistakes that, way back in their first discussion, those repeated references to the things that people have done to themselves, no matter what he tries to do. I think he learns the gravity, we will see that he learns the gravity of his assumptions throughout this particular story. But I agree with you that he's trying to help Bruce. I just don't think it's as simple as the external Bruce. I think he's trying to reach the internal Bruce. It's totally internal, not...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it correctly, but what's going on in my head is... And I agree
with you on
that. Worried.
And so I am saying I agree with you on that. So, I'm clear on that part. I'm just saying you started off with this with such a focus on the external perception of him, and I don't think that's what Clark means at all.
No, right. I don't think that either. Wait,
okay. Let me go with, and it's something that Mandy and you were just discussing now that I do think is an element to it, though. The way Clark is behaving as far as with the Kal-El and things like that, Bruce at this stage, at this time, in this type of storytelling, was still distancing himself from other heroes, was still putting up a bit of a wall. Because this took place before the events that we saw in 1 year later. So this is still a Bruce Wayne that is very distanced from, or still a Batman that is very distanced from other heroes. Still holds himself at arm's length. So maybe on that end, that kind of external perception of himself, I would agree with. Just not the Batman persona per se, as much as the rage right now that's maybe keeping him separated. So I guess I can see what you're saying as far as some of that bleed over there then. I keep forgetting that this is the Batman that went through Bruce Wayne Murderer, that went through Bruce Wayne Fugitive, and a lot of a lot of his problems came from the fact that he closed himself off to other people. And that would be that is an external part of it. So I guess you're right on that extent with that bleed over.
Okay, cool. I'll take that and move on. Following Day has...
He's a complex character.
Yeah. Yeah, oh God, yeah. And both, well, actually, and we're seeing both of them are.
But I like here that we do see how much they have in common. Because they do have a ton in common. Even though I think both of them would deny it adamantly, the elements that they do have in common.
Yeah, and that's... Yeah, you even said it earlier that I thought was just a beautiful comment about how they are the opposites of the same coin. They're not brightness and they're not the light and the darkness. They're both the same hero who has the different flip. And I thought that's a cool statement of the two of them. Now, Superman again pays another visit to Leone, and he's got to ask the big question. And it's one of those things where you just want to ask it as soon as he. I personally, if it was me, I would have wanted to ask that as the very first question to Superman. Can you cure cancer? It's a huge thing. We know he's on his end of his ropes. We know it's probably days, maybe weeks, months, if at best, he's got left. So, can you do it? And Clark's response, it's that this is the part that, you think about being a superhero. It's stuff like this with Clark that really would make me not want to be Clark Kent. Because he's like, I don't know. I never really tried. And I won't try. Because once I do it, the people will expect me to keep performing miracles like this. And if I had Clark's knowledge, if I had access to the Kryptonian database, if I had all this basically the limitless time Clark has, I would want to cure cancer. I would want to cure diseases that just, See,
I have a real problem with that statement from him.
Which statement? That
if Superman thought he could cure cancer, that he wouldn't, or that he wouldn't try.
Right.
It's not that he wouldn't. He's saying here that he wouldn't try.
Right.
Because people would expect him. Don't you think Superman would try? And this is for both of you. Don't you think at his core Superman would try to secretly release that if he thought he could?
I think if there was a way for him to not let people know that it was Superman who came up with the cure.
That's what I mean. That's exactly what I'm saying. I can't imagine him. Go ahead, Jim.
You think about that wonderful Supergirl issue that we love where she promises that kid who's dying from cancer, I'm going to cure you. Clark was the first one to go to her and say, hey, we can't do this. We can't do this type of stuff.
And I'm not talking about that.
But that's the same scenario that he's telling her. No, we have to have the different levels.
He's saying that he would never try. There's a huge difference there. He wouldn't try publicly, but you don't think that Superman, if he could cure cancer, if he thought that he could find a way to, wouldn't do it?
See, I don't think he'd go down that road because you're saying maybe he could release it somehow.
I'm saying if he thought he could.
That's a Pandora's box that he knows once it's open, you can't shut it. Where does it end? Is it cancer? Well, I'm only going to cure the life-threatening diseases. I'm only going to cure these diseases. Well, I'm only going to cure these diseases.
But that's like saying I'm not going to save anybody because people will believe I can save every single person. And he doesn't save every single person. I don't know that I agree with this. I don't know that I agree with Superman's statement there. I think it might show the humanity of Superman in the sense that we see that his logic is a little flawed here. But you could apply the same argument. Take out I never try curing somebody to I never tried saving anybody. If I tried saving anyone, everyone would expect me to save everybody. Why would I do that? It doesn't fit the character. Logically, it doesn't fit the character because he saves people on a daily basis, but he doesn't save everyone. He can't. We saw that earlier in the Middle East. He tried to save everybody there, but he couldn't.
And he learned from that mistake.
Did he?
Well, kind of.
So he stopped saving people. He'll never try to save anybody again?
There's a level to what he's going to do, though. It's not the everyday event. It's not the.
So maybe he'll cure the common cold and not cancer. Do you follow my logic here?
I understand your logic, and I agree.
I don't know that I agree with this.
In a way, I do agree with you, but in a way, I do disagree with you because
how is it different?
It's it's hard to explain. You think about, like, with cancer. You think about the common cold, AIDS. You think about cystic fibrosis, another one that hits young people. You think that'd be a great disease to cure, wouldn't it? If I had the knowledge, that'd be a great one, because that's a disease that kills young people. Life expectancy, I think, is in the 20s for people with that disease.
He stopped suicide bombers before, but he's not ending suicide.
He's not
bombers.
going after. He can't stop every one of them. If he's in the position to help somebody, he's going to. But with the diseases and going after the diseases, that's something beyond that. I think that would take him away from, if he spent his time doing the research and doing the curing to try to cure all these diseases. Because once he started curing the one disease, he would have to cure them all. It wouldn't be I can only cure cancer.
I can actually.
Go ahead, Mandy.
I can actually see what Jim's saying, because once you start to perform acts that would make you appear to be more like a god figure, if he tries and comes up with a cure for cancer and comes up with a cure for AIDS, then people will. They already, to an extent. Father Leone.
They already shout, "Superman save me!" The whole point of this story, "Superman save me," is because he saved one person. They all expect that. It's the same thing with this. I guess it's at his fundamental core. It's who he is. I don't know. I guess I don't know that I totally agree with him on this element, that he wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, but
because it goes against the nature of him that we see in this.
I agree with him, what he's saying, and because that, for me, would be the hardest part about being Superman. The hardest part about being Superman is hearing.
But it's the same thing.
The hardest part about being Superman is hearing all of the cries for help and not being able to help them. So if he were to go down a whole nother road of another level of people that he was helping, how could he not cure every single disease on this planet? Then once you cure every single disease, how can he not go after the drug abuse? Well, heck, forget drug abuse. Let's go after child abuse. Let's go after the rapists. Let's go after the spousal abuses. Let's go after the drug dealers. Let's go after.
He does go after all those people.
But it's not. He's not. He's living his life. He is more than just Superman. He's not flying around, and stopping every crime as it's committing, immediately as it's committing. Right now in Metropolis, there are abuse going on. Right now in Metropolis, there are people selling drugs.
His argument here is that he doesn't want to head down that path because people would expect him to continue performing miracles. He does that on a daily basis. Saving lives is performing a miracle. He takes a situation that no other person could prevent and does that. He stops airplanes. He catches big globes off of the Daily Planet. He performs miracles on a daily basis and does that. Nobody else can do what he does.
In those aspects, yes. But in aspects, say, like cancer, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, that type of stuff can stop cancer if you catch it in time.
The police can save people if they catch them on time.
Right. The police
it's the same difference.
Yeah. But
every argument that you're making here could be applied to...
The big globe falling down, the police couldn't do that. An airplane falling from the sky, police couldn't do that. Big giant water monster, giant fire monster.
Out of the way.
They can move, but they couldn't save the people who were in the plane. They couldn't save the people who were about to be crushed.
They could also, if a guy comes with a gun, start shooting at people. They could save some of the people, maybe not all of them, but yet Superman still jumps in there. I disagree with you here immensely. I think
this is going to be a point where we're going to agree to disagree.
Core, Superman, if he could cure those diseases, if he found the element to do that, I can't believe that he wouldn't do it. It does to me, it's not. I just fundamentally disagree with this because of who he is and what we've seen him do. He has given up his life for that. Do you think he leads a normal life?
He tries to.
On what level?
He's got the wife, the job, the friends, the personal time,
How much personal time does he have?
I don't know.
What fun time does he have? When was the last issue of Superman you read where he had a lot of fun time?
Well, right now he's on Krypton.
He's on Krypton right now.
He gave up that entire life. You're just saying that to build a better life for a society, to protect the entire world from his own people. I mean, he gave up everything.
That's
just
a huge
mentioned.
sacrifice.
But you're saying he chose to live a normal life. There is no guarantee this plan of his is going to allow him to have that quote-unquote normal life again. He just gave that up because of his quote-unquote mission. Like, I guess I'm just saying, fundamentally, we're seeing that in his character right now.
Yeah.
I find it incredibly interesting.
I understand what you're saying, and on one level, I do kind of agree with what you're saying, but for some reason, I'm still holding on to that. I'd liked that line in him, because that's something with me, when I think about Superman, that's the reason I wouldn't want the powers of Superman. There would be too much responsibility. I would want to do all those stuff that I just said. I would want to do that.
Would you be Superman if you could promise not to cure cancer, but then you could give up your entire life to save everybody? What's the difference?
See, if I had those powers, I would drive myself crazy. Well, crazier than I am. Mm-hmm. If I had those powers, I would be in the lab, curing cancer, curing all those diseases. I would be hitting the streets, taking out the pieces of garbage that are out there. I would be fighting the supervillains that are coming down, the invasions from the alien planets. I would be doing all of that stuff, and I would stop being Jim Stegall. I would stop being me, and I would only be Superman. I would only live in that Fortress of Solitude, and that would, in the end, would destroy Superman, would destroy who he is. And we're seeing that a more emotionally detached Superman, what it's doing to him. And if he continues down this road, if he continues down this darker path, we are going to we've already lost Clark Kent. We now only have Kal-El. We're going to lose Kal-El.
That's why
we're going to lose the hero.
I would see him doing that secretly. That's the key here. I'm not talking about publicly. I'm not saying Superman, because Superman, I don't see Superman coming out and saying, hey, I can cure cancer. What do you want me to do now? I don't mean it that way. I just don't see him, the nature of this character and who he is. If he could give Earth the cure for cancer, I can't imagine him not doing it.
But does he want to take that possibility of a cure for cancer away from someone else? I mean, by going out and curing cancer, is he saying, you guys don't have the intellectual ability to do it on your own, so I'm going to do it for you?
But that'd be like saying that now, and I mean, I've got to, from the hero standpoint, I don't want to save people because I'm taking away the opportunity for others to save people. Like, the police to do that. I guess it doesn't seem that cut and dry for me. We've seen him work with people at Star Labs before and scientists before and helped and assist them with experiments to try and better society. I just can't see him not doing that. We saw years of him working with Star Labs.
And
I'm not saying it's bad. And I should clarify here. I'm not saying this is bad writing here. I'm saying I don't know that. I think one of the things I enjoy about this story is we see a very human Superman. I'm saying I don't agree with the character and what he's saying right now, not as much as I don't agree with Azzarello. That's the key here. And so I don't want to say that I'm saying I think this is a bad segment or bad writing. I think this is another example of where I think Azzarello deliberately threw in things that were open-ended to make you think. And I'm looking here, and I'm disagreeing with Superman. And I want to clarify that here, so I don't want to say that I think this is a bad segment in the book. And maybe the end result of this whole thing is, and it is, we just got to agree to disagree here on this. It's maybe just the way I interpret it, and that's fine. Yeah. I have no issue with that at this moment, because you guys have very powerful arguments on your side. But I think it was something that struck a chord with me when I read Azzarello's opening in this. This story was deliberately crafted to make you think beyond the pages, beyond with what was just being laid out by the characters when they were speaking here. And this is a point where I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't agree with him here. I don't think he would do this. I think if he had Star Labs was talking with a scientist and there was some element of something where he's like, oh my gosh, I could cure cancer if we could do this, I can't imagine him not going through and doing that. He said, I've never tried and I won't. But that's because he's never been faced with the real possibility before. I'm not saying here in Father Leone's case, he's never tried, because what if it was dangled in front of him? Like, wait a minute, oh my gosh, I'm seeing something that Star Labs is working on here. Or I found something at the Fortress of Solitude that was an accident because of some other experiment that I was doing. If I head down this path, I might be able to find the cure for cancer. I'm not saying that he even by accident finds the cure. I'm saying he finds something that makes him think, wait a minute, this could cure. If this does this, it might cure cancer. I can't imagine Superman not heading down that path. I can't imagine him as a man not doing it. And not bad writing here. I think it's one of the interesting parts where it made me think, is this guy being honest with himself here? I don't think he's being honest with himself.
he may not be. And you know what? As I said, I see what you're saying, and now I'm even. Hold on, no, I'm not agreeing. It's like it's weird because as you're the more when you first started saying like we're going to disagree on this one, we're going to have to agree to disagree. But then as you're talking, I'm seeing what you're saying about with what if Superman's lying to himself, because that's something I never thought about. When I read this, I immediately sunk into it because that's for me personally. That's, as I said, that's the thing that would prevent me from wanting to have the powers of Superman. You think about all the heroes out there. That's the thing that always would scare me about Superman, that he could do so much more and isn't able to. And
what he does on a daily basis, the choices he has to make. Remember, this guy can hear everything. He knows he's not everywhere. He doesn't need the news to tell him that, the media to tell him that. He knows on a daily basis he isn't able to save everybody. You said before, if you were Superman, you'd want to be able to save everybody and do everything as Superman. He knows already he can't do that, and you would know that at the time.
Yeah, and it would hurt.
How soon would that? That's his strength of character, is that he keeps going on in spite of that.
Yeah, see,
I can't imagine him having a character. Hey, look how many people you could save if you did this.
Yeah.
I can't imagine him saying no to that. And I will agree with this. I don't see him after this flying to the Fortress of Solitude and trying to find the cure for cancer. I don't mean that I'm saying he's going to stop being Superman and work in a lab. I don't see that from this character, but I'm saying, for him to make the statement, I've never tried and I won't. He's too involved with research from especially Star Labs. Star Labs is a key to me on this, where there could be something that would accidentally lead him to the possibility of it, and I can't see him not doing it.
Okay, I just noticed something, and the word accidentally. See, when I read him and I won't, that to me is Superman putting on the white coat and in the Fortress of Solitude. See, that's when I say him saying, and I won't, that's why I agree with him. I don't think he would, if he was in Star Labs and you're saying that
or in the Fortress.
Or in the Fortress.
Because he does do experiments in the Fortress.
Yeah, and if you're talking the accident side, where, hey, wow.
I agree that he's not, I 100% agree that he's not going to go back to the Fortress and say, hey, I'm going to sit down today and try to find the cure for cancer.
When I was reading that, that's the only way I was thinking.
Except, though, he's saying, I'm sorry, if I did, people would expect me to perform miracles. Now, here's the catch with this distinction right here. He's basically saying that he doesn't want to do it because if he gave that to society, they would expect him to perform miracles. That's the part I'm having trouble with, because going with what I'm saying, even if you change this to accidentally, he still says this here, and I don't agree with that. He would give that to society. He would find a way. Maybe not as Superman. And I honestly would agree with... Wait, if I were Superman... except, honestly, if I were Superman, there's a part of yourself where you're going to say, I don't know that I could not try to gain some monetary fame out of the whole thing. I mean, I would love the fact that, if I could cure cancer and stuff like that, not only would I be helping a whole bunch of people, but I'd be filthy rich. And I'm going to admit my own humanity on that one. I would be thrilled to death that I made a ton of money and everybody was happy and everybody was saved, and that type of thing. I would think that would be great. But Superman wouldn't care about any of that. That's kind of the distinction with him. He would be happy to do it anonymously.
Yeah, I don't know. When I read
we could go on.
Yeah, we
actually probably should jump off with this. Because we could go on for hours with it. And I do see elements of what you're saying with him as far as the frustration of being Superman, because we hear him talk about Superman save me and how he hears that all the time, but yet he keeps saving people. Like when Father Leone said it, and before he met with Batman, he deliberately didn't fly to Father Leone immediately because in the tone of his voice he heard it wasn't urgent.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. Even this guy that gets worn down, he listens to everything, tries to pick up the tone of voice, and tries to do it all. He tries to perform miracles. He tries to be everywhere at once. That's his life. He does try to perform miracles.
Yes, he does. But it's not... I don't know.
He leaves his job. Wait, if he's trying to have such a normal job, talk about a fella who is self-destructive at his job. How many times does he leave through a closet? And I mean, at the wrath of his boss. Where could a normal? That's not a normal human life.
Well, I hide all the time at work. So you can't,
Yeah, but
because you got
don't
a
hide.
classroom of children. With me, I'll hide.
Yeah,
time.
I can't hide.
Yeah, you guys can't. That is one thing about teachers that we know
But
a bunch
you don't
of, but
hide at the expense of your job in the sense that you're going to get. Do you hide at your work with the intention of the wrath of your boss?
with the intention, no. I hide to try
He
to
knows.
avoid the wrath of boss. But
Right.
I have
Like when he does this,
yeah.
he knows that
There is a chance.
Not the chance. He knows there's a very high probability because of how many times we've seen it. So this guy is willing to put that job at risk in order to do that.
Yeah, I worked with a guy who used to he would take time from where he was supposedly filing police reports and I have a court appearance I got to go to, and I talked to him on his cell phone and I'd hear his lawnmower running in the background. Yeah, so we know he wasn't at the police station. He wasn't doing that stuff. He was at home mowing his lawn, or he was at home watching TV or doing something like that. That's a completely apples and he did it for selfish reasons. Superman's leaving for positive reasons, but I do know guys who have two jobs where they're in the middle of work, and they get a call regarding their other job, and they'll call and take that job, and they'll talk about the job, maybe booking. I worked with a guy who was in a band, and throughout the day we would hear him talking to clients that he's booking his band job with. Especially as it got closer to the weekend, we would really hear him lining up where his band's going to play at. But all the while, he's still doing his job. Now, he did run the risk of incurring wrath from our boss if he spends too much time doing, booking gigs for his band than he does actually doing his job there. But that is a very normal human thing to do, to juggle multiple things at once. Superman's primary job is being Superman. His secondary job, it's that job that keeps him connected to humanity, is being Clark Kent, is being the Daily Planet reporter. It's a good job for him.
Except he would sacrifice that in an instant,
right,
for being Superman.
Right.
Whereas your friend that you're talking about with booking gigs for his band and all that stuff, more than likely he would tone all that down.
The opposite.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Big Daddy would have dropped, the bank job for the band if he could do that full time. You're saying that's his heart.
No, but saying if he could do that full time.
Right.
In Superman's case, he doesn't stay at the Daily Planet for monetary reasons.
Right.
He stays at the Daily Planet for a tether connection. He would give that up for an instant.
Yeah. And he did. Mm-hmm. He did give that up for an instant. Well, not for an instant, but for what happened.
Well, yeah.
What did I say?
For an instant?
Yeah.
Come on.
For just an instant. Sorry, I'm arguing semantics with you.
It's a deep I mean, it really is.
I know.
Honestly, though, one of the important things that I think comes out of this discussion, really, we could probably debate this on the forum for ages, and I could go on probably for hours talking about elements of this, and you could too.
Yeah.
I don't know that there is a winner on this one, and I don't really care about that element. I think this is what we're touching on here, all three of us, is the strength of this piece is that it accomplishes what Azzarello wanted. When you get really deep into some of the themes that were laid out here, he wanted us to do this. Exactly, the discussions that we're having now and how deep they are and the tangent we got on here.
He wants us to sit and argue about it.
And in his forward in this is exactly what he was hoping for with this piece. So I guess I would say
kudos to him. Yeah.
One of the strengths of this argument is that it was generated specifically by what this author intended for us to do, right or wrong. And I don't know. And I do think that he deliberately left this, and he says that he left it open with the intention that people could read this and interpret certain things in a lot of different ways and be taken in different directions. And I agree with something both of you have said throughout both of our discussions, is the fact that you can read this multiple times and interpret scenes differently through multiple reads. Depending on how you're coming at it and who you're focusing on.
And I guarantee the next time I read this, book, I will read this sequence a lot different. I will read a lot of these, especially
I will too, from our discussion here. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. That Batman discussion, I am going to completely read differently the next time I read it.
And I will
through.
too, though, because there were elements of what you were saying in there that I'm thinking about now. Because even at the end of that one, you saw I was thinking about how some of Bruce's the way I was thinking about the way Bruce was when this was written, and how it's. I'm not talking about the outward appearance where how he affects people. Where he uses that intimidation and superstition, but how he was at this stage in storytelling in both the Justice League and in this book, kind of keeping people at an arm's length. So it's some of what Hal says when Hal talks about Bruce.
Yeah.
That, they're friends, but, they had those moments. And part of that was because there was a lot of elements of Bruce that he was very hard to get personal with in the way that he can with Ollie or with Barry, who, again, are two other different relationships, but...
It's something you just said clicked on something that back when, with that whole Justice League dealings with it, at the Justice League, it was Bruce who was coming up to Clark with he threw out that initial thing like how war is usually the privilege of the wealthy, and Clark's like, hey, don't go there. And he backed him off. And even the one point in time where Clark's like, I understand why, Bruce is like, I understand why you're doing this alone. He kind of gives him the cold shoulder. Those two, in a way, kind of switched the roles, where Bruce was stepping up and trying to, be there for his friend, and Clark was backing off.
Because
Clark
he was keeping him with what Clark was going
right. You're saying how, oh, dang, I just noticed that now. That just clicked in my head that we had kind of a role reversal for the two.
Oh, yeah.
I was like,
Bruce was deeply connecting with what Clark was going through at that moment.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a deep story. It's a very deep story.
One of those moments where I keep forgetting I'm on a show. I'm like, this is wow, this is cool.
This is a great example of a book that reads much better through multiple read-throughs because of the fact if you open yourself up to interpreting scenes and events differently each time, you're going to catch something new. It's cool.
Yeah. Now,
which I am so shocked that I am saying this, because I meant it when I was responding to Daryl's comments. I thought I was going to be the other guy in this one. That I was going to be like, guys, I got to tell you, I didn't like this. So it's funny. It is funny how my perception has changed.
Now, Leone in the Fortress of Solitude, that is absolutely wonderful sequences. It was one we talked about with the diamond and that peach pit, how, we would ruin it with the geek fanboy moment by diving in the fountain and retrieving those things.
Yeah.
Talk about another ruined moment. If I was there, I'd be reaching for the camera. Hey, can I get a picture with that and posing?
Dude, I'd climb on the dinosaur.
Oh, God. Yeah.
And the fact that he asks, who's your decorator?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great.
I am.
The place is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
It is funny that, it's something that I want to commend artists in comics. I know that some of it's driven by script, some of it's driven by artistic interpretation. I think it's one of the strengths of this medium is the fact when both gel together, they can create a new interpretation of something we've seen so many times in a way that keeps it looking cool. Even the Batcave here, we see it so, briefly when we see Bruce working there, and I'm just kind of like, wow, this is darn cool. The game Arkham Asylum just came out, and one of the cool features, if you purchase Arkham Asylum, if you're a PlayStation user, and I'm sure that there's similar things going to be available on the 360, but their home personal community, you can have your own personal spaces, which are like your little apartments or houses. You can have a Batcave. You get one that's driven from the game, and it's another artistic interpretation of the Batcave. But it was funny. I'm like trying to find the right furniture to put in, because there's already things in there that are Batman related, but I'm trying to put the right furniture. I was deleting furniture that I was putting in there because I'm like, oh no, this just doesn't look right for the Batcave. Which is further proof that I'm a geeky moron.
Yes. That
I would spend actually that. My wife was laughing at me. She's like, what are you doing? She's like, you just took all this time putting that furniture in there? And I said, but I looked at it, and it looks awful.
The feng shui just does not work.
Right, but you have to understand, like, I don't have, with doing this show, it's not like I have this huge social network on home where I've got all these friends that come into my personal space or anything like that. Nobody ever has come into any of them. I don't know if anyone ever will. So I'm creating these things like I'm going to be showing them off to 20 different people, and that they're going to be so worried about my Batcave looking wrong because it's got the wrong furniture that's not very aesthetically pleasing. I'm a moron.
Yes.
But it is something, one of the things, and one of the reasons why I went on this tangent is the artists who created that game, the conceptual artists, and I'm not sure who they were, they, again, took this iconic interpretation of the Batcave, and this is more like a satellite Batcave site that was available at the Asylum, because the game completely takes place in Arkham Asylum. But I loved the fact that you got to see, because there was the Batmobile, the Batwing that was in there, and just different elements that were all completely differently interpreted, just the same way that we see Wonder Woman's invisible jet, with a different interpretation here. We see, I just think it's great that artists are still able to play with these, after all these years, these iconic elements. Mm-hmm. The 60s Batmobile is a great example of artists playing with what we knew for the Batmobile. If you look at the original Golden Age Batmobile, looks nothing like the 60s Batmobile did.
It just looked like a regular car, didn't it?
Yeah, but then they played with it over the years, and it had like a giant bat
on the front,
symbol on the front. And
then we got more of the stretched out car looking, and yeah.
And one of my favorites is still the 70s Batmobile, which looks like a completely different. It's more like a really cool sports car. But that's one of the great things that I think that's what keeps these characters fresh, is that artists can play. Dick Grayson's Batman is a great example of an artist playing with the iconic costume, and it works. So.
Now, we briefly just talked about that bat. I loved him sitting he's sitting in just the tall back chair, but his cape is kind of draped, because sometimes they show Bruce in the Batcave with his, he's got the costume on, but the cowl down, and that does look cool, but there is just something about seeing him in the cape and cowl as he's sitting there thinking, and I could imagine that he probably is able to focus a little bit better when he's in the costume. Christian Bale did that great interview where he was sitting there talking about how when he put on the costume, it kind of like brings out the beast in him, and it just turns. His
voice go deeper too.
Yeah, and it helped.
Superman just got done telling him that Bruce is the mask,
right?
And he's keeping the Batman mask on in response to that whole thing, which I thought was another interesting talking about. I mean, there was something pivotal that you pointed out there that I thought was interesting, that he's keeping it on right there to stay in Batman mode for that purpose.
He's got to focus, and that's when he figures out what's going on. And I like the fact that he knows he couldn't make it to the fortress in time, so he calls the person who probably could make it in time, but also the person who could slow down, stand up against him. Yeah, that was
the way
a great
that he
thing.
Figured it out was so cool, though. How he's analyzing Superman's words. Why do you need me to find this out? Why do you need me better? Why do you need me to find peace? Why do you need this? Because Superman needed it to happen. Because he says, but I need you to better. Not you need to be better for yourself. I need you to be that way. Those are key words right there, because he's focusing on that. And I thought that was great that he was analyzing how it was presented to him. Because he wasn't saying it from one path to the other. Bruce, you're on a self-destructive path. This wasn't an intervention.
Yeah.
This was a goodbye. And he figured it out right there. Very cool.
And and Wonder Woman, even as she's finding out, she's already on her way there. She's like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, once again, it's just the power of like a Trinity type moment. They're both Bruce and Wonder Woman know what's going on. She's already in motion. She knows she can be the one who can stop him. But it's also, she is one of the few powerhouses that could do it, but she's the warrior diplomat that we've always talked about. She's got the power to stop him, but maybe she can be the one to reach him. Maybe she's the one who can actually say, hey, Cal, this isn't the way you want to go. This isn't you. This isn't the right thing to do. Because she's right now got it in her head that he's going to he's going to kill himself. This is him ending his pain, moving on or whatnot. She's not thinking that this is a dimensional portal. She's thinking this is a suicide. This is, him giving up in a way. And that was cool, this final splash page of her standing there. She's got that special funky dagger that she got from Delilah. She's got her battle shield ready to rock, and even she's kind of got the pretty rock and pose there. She's got her cape kind of flowing in the wind. It's once again that great Jim Lee art that I was just gushing. The reason I bought this larger size, this absolute version, was for panels like that, was for full splash pages like that I could just sit there and go, ooh, that's really cool looking.
It's amazing. It really is. The artwork was always, that's something that's been consistent throughout my entire read-through, and this has been the artwork, and it remains it. I want to thank Mandy for joining us for this segment once again, and we'll try to wrap this up in part 3. We'll see how that discussion goes. There were some tangents on this one that I don't think any of us expected that get kind of meaty and kind of fun. I really enjoyed recording this particular episode. I also want to thank you, the listeners. We have a very patient audience base. Any of you that have been long-time listeners of the show know that the start of the school year, as I mentioned on my previous episodes, is really crazy for me. I want to thank Jim on a little bit of a side note too. Jim did a lot of the heavy lifting on this show. He did the lead of For Tomorrow, and for our show, there's a lot of prep that goes into making sure that we do these dissections. We really get to everything, and he really did a lot of background work, more so than usual, to make sure that this baby runs really nice. So he doesn't know I'm recording this, but it's kind of, I've already thanked him personally, and I thought I should do it on the show, just as a little side note, because Jim and I kind of pick on each other on the show. Actually, I pick on him probably a lot more than he picks on me, but Jim knows I'm just playing around anyway, so I wanted to take a little moment to thank him for this. And we will be back with part 3 of this next week. I want to give a shout-out to longtime friend of the show, actually a friend of mine before I was even doing a podcast, Peter Rios. There wouldn't be a Raging Bullets if it wasn't for the wonderful help of Peter Rios when I was originally thinking of doing a podcast. So I wanted to shout out, he's doing a Titan Spotlight podcast, which is going to be awesome. Anybody who's been listening to Comic Geek Speak knows that Peter Rios is just a longtime fan of the Teen Titans, and he's decided to finally break down and do a Spotlight podcast as a part of CGS. If you go to comicgeekspeak.com, you can actually listen to the first episode right from their website. It's the introductory episode, and then it's going to be getting a feed of its own as a part of the Comic Geek Speak podcasting output. So definitely make sure to check out Peter Rios' Teen Titans podcast. I already listened to the first episode. It's fantastic. Peter's always dynamic and interesting to listen to, so if you haven't had a chance to check this out, make sure to check out Peter Rios and Teen Titans. Also want to remind everyone at the end of the show to listen to, we have a unedited Raging Reels discussion with Mandy. We started talking to her initially about the Chicago Comic-Con, and in reflection I started thinking, well, people want us to jump right into For Tomorrow and have that discussion. But this was kind of fun because this was her first convention. I thought it was a really fun discussion, so it's on the end of the episode for anybody who wants to listen to it as part of the Raging Reel, and I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion as much as we did recording it. Our next episode, we're going to be joined by friend of the show, Freddie E. Williams II, as he discusses his new book, actually upcoming book at that point in time, The DC Guide to Digitally Drawing Comics, which is going to be coming out in early September. So if you haven't had a chance to pre-order it, it's a great chance to pre-order it, but we're going to tell you why on this episode if you haven't yet. I already pre-ordered it. I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to this book.
Yeah. So that's a nice thing. We'll be able to talk with Freddie about that. That'll be a small mini episode. We're going to be focusing mainly on that book, and then we'll be back next week with our full-blown episodes. So you're actually getting a little bit of a bonus in between our shows. So definitely be on the look on that. That'll be episode 175, which will be up by Monday at the latest. So kind of fun. We got a lot of interesting things going on.
Woohoo!
All right. Jim, our sponsors for this episode, DCBService.com and InstockTrades.com, where you can pick up Green Arrow Black Canary number 25. It's 25 issues of that series already.
I know, outstanding.
Regularly $3.99, 40% off, only $2.39. Thank you, DCB Service, for continuing to support us. And Preacher Book 1 hardcover. Make sure to pick that up from InstockTrades.com. Regularly $39.99, 47% off, only $21.19. Volume 1 and Volume 2 trade, $14.99. 47% off, only $7.94 each. You can get each of those volumes for $7.94, which contains the first 17 issues of the series. So if you're looking to do it on a budget, You can do it for $14.99 and get 17 full issues of Preacher. We're going to be discussing issues 1 through 12 on the show, though, so it'll be interesting to discuss that experience with that very dense read.
Yeah, that wonderfully dense read.
Yeah, it's a nice meaty story with an edge to it. So that's instocktrades.com. Thank you for supporting us with that. That'll be mid to late September. Want to remind everyone to check out ragingbullets.com, where you can find listener-produced columns, Where's Whatnot Nows, DC release dates, show news, and much, much more. We're always looking for submissions and participation. Please send them to ragingcontest@gmail.com. We have the Life in the Gutter blog up there. There's a brand new blog that's up there, a Green Lantern-focused blog up there from our friend Myron Rumsey, who just started that up. So definitely check out his work as well. It's great. We're having a great amount of participation lately. Remember, anything that you send into our website and our through our show for ragingcontest@gmail.com. We have a contest that's going to be coming up in September where we're going to be handing out some more prizes that we have. And we're also going to be choosing our listener that's going to be joining us for whatever we're going to do after Preacher. And I don't know because they're going to decide. So it'll be fun to have another listener guest on. I like doing this kind of bi-monthly listener guest, and I'm glad we're getting that back on the schedule again because these discussions with Mandy have been super fun. So I'm glad we're going to get an opportunity to do that again. It's nice to have a different voice because she clearly explores the books in a way that's different than either you or I, and we already see things very differently from each other. So it's nice to have a third perspective in there, so I'm looking forward to doing that with another listener sometime soon. So, Jim, we will see everyone on Monday at the latest with Freddie E. Williams II, and then back midway through next week with what will probably be the final part of For Tomorrow. So we'll see you then.
Bye.
Mind if we chat just for a couple minutes about Wizard World Chicago?
Sure.
Just because I was figuring she was there, it'd be kind
cool.
of fun to talk about that, because we weren't there this year, so I'm actually curious.
Yeah. Freddie says hi, by the way.
Cool. Yeah, we're going to be, we're actually recording with him this coming weekend. So.
Oh, great.
Joining us right now is actually our columnist and friend of the show, Mandy Stegall from Life in the Gutter. And Mandy, welcome back to Raging Bullets.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Mandy, you were just at Wizard World Chicago, and honestly, it's one of my favorite conventions. Or it's they call it the Chicago Comic-Con? Is that what they were calling it now?
Yeah, it officially changed its name to Chicago Comic-Con. I guess this was the first year.
Now, this for you was, if I remember correctly, you were saying this is your first major convention that you went to, or maybe your first convention.
My first convention, period.
Nice.
What was that like?
It was very interesting. I went with a friend and her brother, and they live, up in the suburbs. So we stayed up there for the weekend and just kind of, drove into Rosemont each day. So didn't have to worry about hotels or anything like that. And, we had weekend passes, so we didn't feel like we had to be there, from open to close every day. So that was nice. We just, went for, I think when we went on Friday, it's like, hey, let's go in and let's just check everything out. Just kind of walk the floor and get an idea of what's there and, not get too crazy about it, like we had to be there open to close all 3 days, so but we went in and there's it was really kind of I guess what I'd imagined it to be like. We were walking through all the different vendors and everything. I was particularly interested that you could get a tattoo there.
Could you really?
So did you get a tattoo?
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Well, she mentioned it.
Wait, I mean, like a permanent tattoo?
Yes, like a permanent tattoo. They had,
Did they have that before? Do you
I
know
don't ever.
tattoo.
I don't ever remember seeing a tattoo place.
Wow.
At Chicago.
I mean, I have my friend just recently got a tattoo, and she said that when she heard the guys doing the tattoos, her shoulder twitched a little bit, because she just recently got one, and but no, we saw at least two, and I was like, oh, so you can come to the Comic-Con and get a tattoo, and that's nice.
Were they just doing permanent ones, or did they do like temporary ones as well?
I don't know. We didn't stop to really check it out too much, but
I would assume you'd make a killing there if you did temporary ones as well, just because you figure, like, hey, I get a Superman one, I get a Batman one, or any comic character, anything like that, you would think that would be a way to go.
I'm thinking you get a signature. They get someone's a creator's signature, and you have that transposed to a tattoo.
Let me go grab this guy from Artist Alley and have him do my tattoo for me. So, go ahead.
Now, there was no DC or Marvel booth, which I found was interesting.
There was not.
Yeah, and I was looking at, I believe it was Newsarama with Dan DiDio. They do that 20 questions, one answer column with theirs, and I always follow that one.
Actually.
Do you read that one?
I do. I like reading it. I really enjoy reading it and seeing what he has to say.
And he doesn't dodge a whole lot. He mainly dodges the ones that if they're major storyline spoilers, he'll dodge those.
Yeah.
But he'll even I appreciate the fact that he'll even tackle some of the tougher questions that come out. And he talked about the no booth, and he just basically was pointing out how many conventions there are now. That they did have an editorial presence because they had the DC Nation panel. Yeah,
Ian Sadler was there, and he did the DC Nation panel, and he also did the Sunday Conversation.
Did you go to both of those?
I went to both of those. Yes, and they were very fun. He was actually giving out rings.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes, if you at the DC Nation panel on Saturday. If you asked a question, and it had to be like, a decent question. It couldn't be like, when's Aquaman coming back? Because everybody goes up and asks that question, So, but if you asked, a decent question, they had a guy who was, he called from the audience, and he says, yeah, you're going to help me out. And he's like, somebody asked a question, they get their question answered, they walk up front, they get a ring. And they were all Black Lantern rings, but he said that probably in October, I think he said, they're going to have the different colors.
Nice,
because you got to get one of each, just decorate the hand. And
exactly, because he walked in and he had rings on every finger, and he basically only had his thumbs that didn't have anything on them. And they were all the different colors.
Were there plans for thumb rings?
I'm kidding.
Well,
there was actually a question about that. They said,
Were there really?
He's like, well, I've got some thumbs left. And he says, I don't know. We could come up with like mauve or something like that.
Periwinkle, come on!
Whatnot cord.
But they had all the colors of the spectrum covered, so he's like, we don't have mauve yet. And somebody asked a really good question. What about white?
They're dodging that.
Yeah,
they are dodging it big time.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting.
I'm hoping we see a white, the White Lantern Corps, and because I was thinking in my head, a couple cool ideas would be the dead relatives that didn't come back as the Black Lanterns, the people who are at peace. The people who are at peace.
Mm-hmm.
He is at peace. Yeah.
So that's interesting. Overall, how was your experience though? When you say it was what you expected, is that a good thing?
It was great. I tell you, we really enjoyed Artist Alley. We spent probably the majority of our time just walking up and down those aisles, going to different people's booths. Met Francis Manipul. Got a couple signed prints from him that are really nice. Went and talked to Freddie. We saw him on Friday, and I said, "Hey, Sean and Jim, say," and he's like, "Oh yeah," and we probably only talked for about 5 minutes, and then we saw him again on Sunday, and we probably stood there and talked for 20 minutes. And he was talking about, Saturday he was in on the DC Nation panel, and he's going to be drawing the JSA All-Star book.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was so interesting because he was in the panel, but he was not sitting at the table with the rest of the guys in there. He was kind of back off, back towards the curtain a little bit, and he's back there and he's drawn, and they're like, yeah, he's working on commissions and everything. So he's back there just drawing away and everything. And Ian Sadler all of a sudden says, Freddie, why don't you tell us about JSA All-Stars? And he's like, what?
Nice.
So, and he had no idea. He's like, well, what do you want me to tell him? He's like, I could tell him all kinds of things, but then you'll probably be mad at me, and so he, when we saw him on Sunday, and he's like, I really had no idea that he was gonna ask me to talk. He's like, well, what do you want me to say? I'm gonna be drawing All-Stars, okay? So,
Well, and it is, if you're reading the current JSA book,
yeah,
it's obvious that the premise behind being an All-Stars book and the regular JSA book is a major storyline spoiler. Because in order to tell you how you wind up where you're at,
yeah.
you have to reveal a mate, because this is where the book's heading right now. You're going to actually ruin the whole arc.
Yeah. And, I told him that how disappointed you guys were that, you lost that recording. And he's like, oh, that was just such a bummer and everything. And we just stood there, and I was, looking through his portfolio, and we're just sitting there talking and everything. And we walked away, and my friend, she's like, are they all that easy to talk to? Because she's not even really a comic fan at all. And she was going to basically, give me a chance to geek out for the weekend. And she was just going there, as a friend. And I totally geekified her.
I'm going to say yes to her question. I think the problem is, though, speaking for myself,
yeah.
I think a lot of times as fans, we put so much pressure on ourselves to walk up with that cool thing to say that ultimately fails, that becomes the problem. Whereas a lot of times, just casual chatter about things, usually lends to a good conversation.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're looking for.
The best one for me is Mike Norton was there, who draws Green Arrow, Black Canary. And we're just, generally walking. I see Mike Norton. I was like, okay, so I go up and, start flipping through his portfolio and everything. And he says, hey, how's it going? And I said, hey, how are you? And he says, I'm good, thank you. And he's like, no, wait, I'm well. And my friend Jenny, she's standing back there, and she just busts up laughing. And I'm just playing it cool, and he looks at her and says, she's not an English teacher, is she? Why, yes, she is. And he's like, ah, damn. And I said, no, it's okay. You corrected yourself. And he's like, well, I just want to let you know that I do have an education. I am educated. And I said, really, it's okay. You corrected yourself.
He's a funny guy, though.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
really
and
a genuinely funny guy.
Yeah, it was really cool. I'm, flipping through his book there, and there's all these pictures all these proof pages from issues that I have, and I was like, see, I remember that, and I remember that, and never that, and I come across a page that has big, Speedy on it, and I said, man, I miss her, and he says, issue 24.
Nice.
Nice.
And I'm like, yeah, she's coming back. And I was like,
Well,
I feel like I just got a nice little, tidbit of information that other people maybe don't have.
Well, the hints are all implying that 2010 is going to be a big year for Green Arrow.
Oh, yeah. Dan DiDio is, basically come out and said that, that's a guy we've got to watch. And was it a solicit that I saw that Green Arrow is going to be teaming up with Green Arrow, but so is Black Canary?
Yeah, it's going to be real interesting to see how this all works out. I'm anxious to see Connor Hawk come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of them is going to be with Connor.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably going to be Dinah.
She's
Maybe.
I am liking the focus on her. That book, they actually talked about how they're going to be collecting some of these second feature stories, whatever you want to call them.
Saw that.
And it looks like Green Arrow, Black Canary, it makes sense to collect it all together.
It does make sense because they are so close, the stories.
Well, it is. A lot of times it's really just a mirror image of what's going on. You're seeing it from the other character's perspective.
Yeah.
So, but things like Manhunter and things like that lead themselves to their own trade collections. So
Right.
that's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah.
But I'm really loving this run of Green Arrow Black Canary right now.
Yeah. I'm enjoying it, and I was kind of apprehensive when the new writer came on. I was like, I don't know, I'm just really enjoying Judd Winnick so much. I'm just worried. When you do that whenever a new writer comes on a book, you're kind of like, really, is it gonna keep going, or is the focus totally gonna change, and that dynamic gonna change for and just that excitement's not going to be there anymore. But I don't know. I'm still enjoying it, and he's been up for what, 6 months now? About
at least,
something like
that. At least 6 months, and
I think it might be more than that.
Yeah,
go back and check.
It might be. You're right. It might be but I'm still enjoying it.
No, it has to be because he was on before the co-features. Right. And we have had a couple issues now with the co-feature, and I know he was on for a decent amount of issues before we hit the co-feature section.
Well, I know he did the issue that Origins and Omens was in,
right?
And that was 6 months ago.
But he was on the book before then. I'm almost positive.
Yeah. So I know it's been at least 6 months.
Right. It was interesting for me. I was enjoying the adventure aspect of that book so much because that was what Winnick was doing, this big adventure piece. And I was totally into that, and it went to a very dark, a much darker tone, I should say. Not a very dark tone, but I mean, it's certainly much darker than it was before, and it works. I think it works because of the fact that for right now, Connor's been out of it, and Speedy's been out of it, and the reasons why they've been out of it. Because he played very much off of the reasons why they've been out of it, and the relationship turmoil between the two, and how even what's been going on in Justice League. I like that it really feels like it's echoing what's going on in other appearances of the character versus ignoring
everything's
them.
Falling together.
So it's a good book. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for it. I'm glad that they've got such big plans. Yeah. You know what? It's great, and it is one of the things I've got to say that I'm liking right now. It's not only am I excited for things like Blackest Night and this upcoming Superman event, but solo books like this, which I mean, this is basically a solo book. They've got cool things coming up, and I'm excited. What are they going to do to Ollie in 2010?
Yeah, right.
I mean, how cool is that? And how is this going to affect Dinah? And what is her standing going to be with whatever's going on with him? Is she going to be part of the reason for what's going on with him, or is this going to bring them closer together, push them farther apart? Relationship is very important to me, and I feel like I'm watching two close friends that I attended their wedding. Because the way that they
you feel bad if they end up getting divorced.
Yeah,
that'll hurt really bad.
I went to their wedding.
Yeah. And you want to give them relationship advice and that type of thing? Because Ollie's making a whole bunch of mistakes right now.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Let's go ahead and jump into For Tomorrow. But I mean, is there anything else about Chicago Comic-Con you wanted to throw out there before jump to that?
No, not really. It was. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I would definitely go back. I think I'm actually planning on going to C2E2 in April, probably.
Are we going to that?
C2E2?
Do you know what that is? That's Reed's Chicago convention. New York Comic Con.
Okay.
That's their. Remember, there's no April New York Comic Con now.
Right.
There's C2E2 in Chicago. Are we doing that?
At McCormick Place.
I don't know. Maybe
we are.
Yeah, I think it's.
I think I'm more than maybe.
Oh, okay.
and DC and Marvel have already confirmed that they will have a major presence there.
Okay. Well, that's give me some more, and I can go to Mecca once again.
And the prices I've already checked are about the same. So
now that one's actually in downtown Chicago, right?
Right.
Oh yes, that's downtown. Okay. That's Michigan Avenue. Yeah.
And I believe there is a Geno's East downtown.
Dude, there is. There is a Geno's
We could
East.
go to the other
I know.
Geno's East. So that's a big selling factor for me as well.
You know, and the Billy Goat isn't too far away from there either.
There you go.
Yeah.
So,
What's the Billy Goat?
Oh, you don't know what the Billy
I
Goat
have
is?
no idea about the Billy Goat.
Do you know the Curse of the Billy Goat with the Chicago Cubs?
No?
No? Okay, so I don't know exactly what year it was, but this guy tried to bring his goat to Wrigley Field, and they wouldn't let him in, so he said, okay, so since you won't let my goat into the park, he's like, you'll never win another World Series.
wow.
Okay.
And they haven't, and somebody thought it'd be funny to name a restaurant after that.
The Billy Goat. Okay.
Billy Goat. So, but it's a big, I mean, it's a big restaurant in that area of the city, and it's in Lower Michigan Avenue, and you walk in, and when you walk in, you better know what you want to eat. Because the guy, he's like, single, double, and it's just burgers and fries, and
It's one of those where you got a special way to order. You can't just say, let me think here. I think I'll go with, it's one of those kind of places.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
But it's an experience. It's, it's really good. So,
I'm surprised that I've never seen that on, because I watch those food channels and Discover channels and Travel Channel food shows.
yeah.
So I'm surprised they've never had the Billy Goat on there, or if they did, I just wasn't paying attention to it. But I don't know. I'm usually good with burger places because we write them. My dad and I, we write them down. And we're like, okay, that's in so and so. So we get the sometimes our vacations we plot them around food and various locations.
I think the first time I went up there with my friend Jenny and stayed the weekend at her parents'. We were going to do like a Christmas shopping, and we went Michigan Avenue, and they're like, oh, well, if we're going to be this close, then we should go to the Billy Goat, and Mandy'd really like that and everything, because I'm a big Cub fan, and of course they're White Sox fans. But they're like, well, Mandy would like it, so here we go, and we walked in, and it was November. It was really, really cold, and we walked into this place, and it was like a sauna. And it was lovely. But
The Billy Goat.
But this guy is standing there at the grill, and he's like, what do you want? And it's just like, yeah, give me this. Okay.